Imagine standing before a grand, ancient structure built thousands of years ago, a monument so magnificent that for centuries, people believed its purpose was simply to showcase power or honor the gods. But what if these stone giants were more than they appeared? What if they held secrets, deliberate, intricate messages left behind by their creators, waiting silently through the ages for someone to uncover their true meaning? This is the captivating mystery of ancient Persia, a civilization that not only mastered architecture and art, but also embedded layers of hidden significance into its most iconic creations. From whispered symbols to carefully arranged inscriptions, these monuments speak in a language beyond the obvious, inviting us to listen more closely. You might have heard of Persia's grand palaces, majestic tombs, and sprawling gardens, testaments to an empire that once ruled vast territories with unparalleled sophistication. But beneath their breathtaking beauty lies something even more extraordinary, a coded legacy. These structures were designed not just to impress, but to communicate, to convey spiritual beliefs, political power, scientific knowledge, and even warnings to future generations. Some messages were meant to be seen only by the initiated. Others were hidden in plain sight, their meanings obscured by time, waiting for curious minds to piece them together. This is a journey into the unknown, where every carving, every column, and every corridor might hold a clue. Today, we're embarking on an adventure to explore 30 of Persia's most fascinating monuments, each one a puzzle box of history and mystery. We'll wander through ancient ruins and magnificent complexes, decoding symbols and stories that have puzzled historians and archaeologists for generations. You'll discover how a simple pattern on a wall might reveal astronomical alignments, how a forgotten script could rewrite history, and how these silent stone sentinels continue to guard secrets that challenge our understanding of the past. So join me as we step into the world of ancient Persia, a land of wonder, wisdom, and whispers from another time. Our journey begins at the very heart of the empire, in the magnificent ceremonial capital of Persepolis. And there, one of the first structures to greet visitors is the grand staircase leading to the Apadana, the great audience hall of Kings Darius and Xerxes. At first glance, the walls of this staircase present a breathtaking panorama of art, a seemingly endless procession of figures carved in stunning detail. But to see only a parade is to miss the masterpiece of political propaganda etched into the stone. This is not merely a depiction of a celebration. It is a carefully crafted declaration of imperial ideology, a hidden message in plain sight meant to be read by every ambassador, dignitary, and subject who ascended these steps. The central theme is unity through strength. The reliefs show representatives from 23 different nations, each group led by a Persian or Median courtier bringing gifts to the king. You see Ethiopians with exotic animals, Babylonians with ornate vessels, Ionians presenting woven cloth, and Scythians offering horses. This procession celebrates the vastness and diversity of the empire, the famous Pax Persica, the Persian peace. But look closer and the hidden message reveals itself. This is not a depiction of equals coming together. It is a meticulously arranged hierarchy. The order in which the delegations are presented is not random. It reflects their perceived importance and loyalty to the Persian throne. The very act of bringing tribute, no matter how rich the gifts, reinforces the core political statement. All roads lead to the Persian king, the absolute center of this world. Specific symbols within the carvings deepen this narrative. Notice that no single group is shown in a state of subjugation or defeat. There are no scenes of battle or conquest. Instead, the message is one of voluntary, orderly submission to a benevolent and powerful authority. This was a brilliant diplomatic move, for visiting delegates seeing their own people immortalized in the stone of the empire's greatest palace was a powerful gesture of inclusion. Yet the underlying reality was clear. Their presence here as tribute bearers affirmed their place within a structure ultimately controlled by Persia. The hidden message is one of soft power, a reminder that loyalty is rewarded with protection and prosperity, while dissent would shatter the delicate peace. The Apadana staircase doesn't just show an empire, it performs the idea of an empire using stone and symbol to communicate a timeless lesson on the nature of power. Just a short journey from the bustling center of Persepolis lies a site of profound silence and power, the necropolis of Naqsh-e-Rostam, hewn directly into the face of a sheer mountain cliff. 4 grand crosses mark the final resting places of Achaemenid kings, their facades staring out across the plain like eternal sentinels. The most famous among them is the tomb attributed to Darius the Great. While its architectural grandeur is undeniable, the true hidden messages are not in the structure's shape, but in the words and images carved upon it. This isn't just a tomb, it's a stone manifesto, a permanent press release designed to secure a king's legacy for eternity. The most direct message is written in stone, quite literally, in 3 different languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. This trilingual cuneiform inscription, known as the DNA, wraps around the tomb's entrance. For centuries, its meaning was lost, the strange wedge-shaped script indecipherable to visitors. But once decoded, it revealed a stunningly detailed piece of political propaganda. Darius doesn't simply list his titles, he meticulously constructs his right to rule. He begins by tracing his lineage, connecting himself to a long line of Achaemenid royalty to establish pure, noble blood. Then he delivers a version of history, his history. He recounts how he, with the favor of the supreme god Ahura Mazda, defeated a usurper named Gonbad-e and put down numerous rebellions across the empire to restore order. The message is clear: Darius is not a conqueror but a restorer, a righteous king chosen by the divine to bring peace and stability. This wasn't meant for the common people passing by who couldn't read it, but for the gods, for future generations, and for any ambitious noble who might need a reminder of the consequences of treason. But the written word is only half the story. Look above the tomb's entrance and you'll find a magnificent relief carving that serves as a symbolic companion to the text. It depicts the king standing on a 3-stepped platform raised above all others. He stands before a fire altar, his hand raised in a gesture of worship toward the Faravaha, the symbol of Ahura Mazda, who floats above, bestowing divine approval. This image powerfully communicates the concept of divine right. The king is the intermediary between the heavens and the earth, yet the most compelling hidden detail lies beneath his feet. The platform that supports him is not held up by simple blocks of stone. Instead, it is carried by 30 figures, each clearly representing the various subject nations of the vast Persian Empire. These are not shackled slaves, they are depicted with dignity, their unique ethnic features and traditional clothing carefully carved, but their message is unambiguous. The entire empire, in all its diverse glory, literally upholds the throne and by extension the king himself. It visually reinforces the inscription's claim of a unified realm, willingly supporting its legitimate ruler. Together, the text and the image form a complete argument for legitimacy, one through divine will and historical necessity, the other through the collective support of the people. Darius ensured that even if the languages were forgotten, the stone would continue to preach the gospel of his rightful reign. Leaving the imposing declarations of Naqsh-e-Rostam behind, our path now leads us to a place of profound simplicity and even greater mystery: the lonely, majestic tomb of Cyrus the Great at Pasargadae. After the elaborate reliefs and grand inscriptions of Darius's tomb, the structure before us seems almost shockingly plain. A simple stone chamber sits atop a stepped platform, isolated on the vast Murghab plain. There are no carvings of subject nations, no boasts of divine right, no lengthy lists of titles. Its power doesn't shout, it whispers. and within that whisper lies one of history's most compelling hidden messages, one written not in words but in stone, space, and celestial alignment. This minimalism was entirely deliberate and revolutionary for its time. Cyrus, the founder of the empire, could have commanded anything. He could have built a mountain, carved a cliff, or covered every surface in gold. Instead, he chose this. The hidden meaning is a radical statement on the nature of true power. Where later rulers felt the need to loudly proclaim their authority, Cyrus's tomb suggests a leader so secure in his legitimacy that he required no such ostentatious validation. The structure communicates humility, a virtue deeply embedded in his legacy. Ancient sources like the Greek historians describe Cyrus as a ruler who respected the customs and religions of the people he conquered, a philosophy reflected in the tomb's restrained elegance. It doesn't dominate the landscape, it rests within it, a part of the world it ruled rather than set above it. This was likely intended to convey that the king's strength came from a connection to his people and his land, not from a remote, godlike superiority. But do not mistake simplicity for a lack of sophistication. The tomb's hidden messages are encoded in its very geometry and orientation. The platform consists of 6 receding tiers, a number significant in many ancient cultures. Some scholars propose this represents the 6 days of creation, while others see a symbolic ascent toward the heavens. The proportions of the entire structure are meticulously calculated, based on precise mathematical ratios that would later be known as the golden mean. This creates a sense of perfect, harmonious balance that is pleasing to the eye on an almost subconscious level, reflecting the cosmic order Cyrus sought to establish in his empire. Perhaps the most captivating secret involves its alignment with the sun. The tomb was positioned with such care that on certain significant days of the year, believed to be tied to Zoroastrian festivals or solar equinoxes, the sunlight strikes the structure in a specific, dramatic way. Imagine the first rays of dawn on the spring equinox illuminating the entrance to the inner chamber, symbolically bringing light and life to the resting place of the great king. This celestial dialogue transforms the tomb from a mere building into a giant astronomical instrument, connecting Cyrus's legacy directly to the eternal cycles of the cosmos. It silently proclaims that his rule was in harmony with the universe itself, sanctioned by the fundamental laws of nature. This powerful, quiet statement stood in stark contrast to everything that followed. When we look back at the tomb of Darius at Naksh-e-Rostam, we see a magnificent but anxious effort to justify power through text and image. Cyrus's tomb requires no justification. Its message is its own existence, a testament to a leader so transformative that his memory needed no elaboration, only a silent, enduring sanctuary that would forever speak of a different kind of king. From the solitary, sun-washed grandeur of Cyrus's tomb, we now travel to the very heart of a later Persian empire, to a square so immense and magnificent it was intended to be the center of the world. This is Naksh-e-Jahan Square in Isfahan, a breathtaking UNESCO World Heritage Site built in the 17th century under the Safavid dynasty. Flanked by the bustling Caesarea Bazaar and the sublime Imam Mosque, the square is a masterpiece of urban planning. But on its eastern side, facing the royal palace, stands a structure that is arguably the most spiritually intimate and architecturally cunning of them all, the Sheikh Lotfollah Mosque. Unlike the grand communal mosques designed for public prayer, this was a private royal chapel, and every inch of it, from its off-axis entrance to its celestial dome, is imbued with hidden meaning. The first clue that this is no ordinary place of worship is its entrance. Instead of aligning with the square, the doorway is set at an angle, creating a small, enclosed corridor that gently turns before opening into the main sanctuary. This wasn't a design flaw, it was a profound symbolic gesture. In Islamic architecture, the act of turning one's back on the noise and commerce of the secular world to face the Qibla, the direction of prayer, is a metaphor for spiritual transition. This angled passageway physically guides you through that process, forcing a literal and metaphorical turn away from the profane world of the square and toward the sacred space within. It prepares the visitor, mind and body, for what they are about to witness, and what awaits inside is nothing short of an architectural symphony of light and symbol. The entire interior is a kaleidoscope of intricate tilework, millions of hand-cut pieces forming complex geometric patterns and flowing calligraphy, but all paths, both visual and spiritual, lead upward to the dome. From a direct standpoint below, the dome's interior appears as a stunning sunburst, a radiating pattern of arabesques that draws the eye toward the heavens. However, the true marvel, the hidden message that has captivated visitors for centuries, is only revealed as the sun moves across the sky. At the very center of the dome is a medallion, and from its center, the tail feathers of a peacock appear to fan out across the interior. This is no ordinary decorative motif. As sunlight streams through the windows perforating the base of the dome, a miraculous transformation occurs throughout the day. The light plays across the subtly angled tiles, causing the colors to shift and shimmer. The peacock's tail, illuminated by this divine spotlight, seems to come alive, its colors changing from gold to cream to a soft, ethereal turquoise. In Persian Sufi mysticism, the peacock is a powerful symbol of the cosmic universe and the manifestation of divine beauty and wisdom. The legend holds that the peacock stood at the gates of paradise and saw the reflection of God, causing it to shed a tear from which the entire material world was created. The feather's eye represents the all-seeing divine presence. Therefore, the shimmering, color-shifting peacock at the apex of the dome is a direct esoteric message about the nature of spiritual enlightenment. It teaches that divine light is not static, it is dynamic and transformative, directly interacting with the world and the seeker. The changing colors represent the different states of the soul on its journey toward God, from the base material world to the pinnacle of spiritual unity. The fact that the full spectacle is only revealed under specific conditions of light is itself a metaphor. Truth and enlightenment are not always immediately apparent. They require patience, the right perspective, and the grace of divine illumination. For the Safavid Shahs and their Sufi advisors who worshipped here, the entire mosque was a spiritual instrument, and its dome was a conscious recreation of the heavens, a silent sermon in tile and light about the soul's ascent to the divine. Leaving behind the bustling squares and spiritual sanctuaries of Isfahan, we now journey to a place of profound silence and stark contrast, a sight that speaks not of earthly power or divine beauty, but of the ultimate human transition. Perched on remote, barren hilltops outside cities like Yazd and Kerman, you'll find haunting, circular structures known as the Towers of Silence or dakmas. To the uninitiated eye, they appear as simple, crater-like stone rings isolated against the sky. But these are not fortifications or forgotten amphitheaters. They are sacred, functional architecture, and every aspect of their design, their location, their shape, their stark simplicity contains a layered, hidden message about one of the world's oldest continuous religions, Zoroastrianism. The most immediate and challenging question is why? Why would a people choose such a method for their departed? The answer is the first and most profound hidden message, an absolute reverence for the natural elements. In Zoroastrian belief, the earth, fire, and water are considered sacred, direct creations of the supreme god, Ahura Mazda. To bury a body in the earth would pollute the soil, to cremate it would defile the fire, to submerge it would contaminate the water. Death and the subsequent decay of the physical form is seen as the temporary triumph of the evil spirit, Angra Mainyu. The body becomes Nasu, impure matter. The solution, then, was both practical and deeply spiritual. Exposure to the one element that could not be polluted, the sun and the sky, and to the scavenging birds that inhabit that realm. This practice, known as sky burial, was seen as the purest, most ecologically respectful way to return the body to the cycle of nature, allowing the soul to be freed unencumbered. This core belief is physically encoded into the tower's architecture. The location on a high, remote hilltop serves multiple symbolic purposes. Firstly, it elevates the ritual above the community, both literally and metaphorically, isolating the impurity of death from the purity of daily life. The difficult ascent ensured that only the designated nacelers or corpse-bearers would handle the body, protecting the wider community from spiritual contamination. But the elevation also brings the deceased closer to the sun, that mighty agent of purity and life, and to the vultures that act as divine agents. The circular design of the tower itself is not arbitrary. The flat stone floor is divided into concentric rings, an outer ring for men, a middle ring for women, and an innermost ring for children. This organization reflects the structure of the community even in its final rite of passage. At the very center stands a central well or pit where the bones, bleached and dried by the sun, would eventually be collected after the vultures had done their work. Lime was added to aid in their gradual, clean dissolution. The entire process was a patient, natural recycling, a final offering of the physical self back to the cosmos. Perhaps the most powerful hidden message, however, is one of ultimate equality and the ephemeral nature of the physical form. Within the ring of the Dakma, there were no grand mausoleums, no ornate sarcophagi, no markers of wealth or status. The king and the commoner received the same right. The body was stripped of all clothing and possessions, laid bare upon the stone under the vast, open sky. This was the final surrender of the ego, the ultimate statement that in death all earthly distinctions are meaningless. The only thing that mattered was the soul's journey. The vultures, often mischaracterized as grim, were revered as sacred facilitators. Their swift and efficient work completing the process in a matter of hours was seen as a blessing, a sign that the soul had been quickly released from its earthly prison. The tower, therefore, becomes a powerful machine for spiritual transition, its design ensuring a swift, clean, and dignified return of the elements to their source, allowing the soul to begin its celestial judgment and journey toward the afterlife. It stands as a silent, stoic monument not to death, but to the triumph of the eternal spirit over the temporary body. Now we venture from the silent spiritual rituals of the Dakmas to a monument of deafening proclamation, a piece of political theater carved into the very bones of the earth. High on the sacred face of Mount Bisoton, along the bustling road that connected the Persian heartland to Mesopotamia, King Darius I left a message so immense, so audacious, that it was designed to be utterly impossible to ignore. This is the Bisoton inscription, and to call it a simple royal decree would be like calling a hurricane a bit of wind. It is a multi-layered masterpiece of propaganda, a historical document of contentious truth, and a stark warning carved in stone for all who dared to challenge the throne. The first hidden message is in its impossible location. The relief and text are carved nearly 300 feet up a sheer limestone cliff. This was not a convenient spot. The effort required to create it, with craftsmen likely suspended by ropes for years, was Herculean. This inaccessibility was a deliberate feature, not a bug. By placing it so high, Darius made a powerful, non-verbal statement about his own power. The message was literally untouchable. It could not be defaced, altered, or easily destroyed by any future rebel. It was meant to be eternal, as permanent and unchanging as the mountain itself, a metaphor for the eternal rule he claimed for his dynasty. Yet it was also positioned directly above the royal road, ensuring that every traveler, soldier, merchant, and dignitary passing below would see it. They couldn't read it from that distance, of course, but they could see the towering figure of the king, dominant and victorious, a constant reminder of who held ultimate power in the lands through which they journeyed. For those who could get close enough, or for the literate scribes who would spread its words, the inscription itself was a bombshell. Carved in 3 different languages, Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, it was the Rosetta Stone of its day, the key that would eventually unlock the secrets of cuneiform script for modern linguists. But its primary purpose was to broadcast Darius's version of history far and wide. The narrative is a gripping tale of divine right and righteous vengeance. Darius recounts how the previous king, Cambyses II, died, and a usurper named Gonbad-e, who claimed to be Cambyses's murdered brother Gonbad-e, seized the throne. According to Darius, this Gonbad-e was a magus, an impostor who deceived the people. He tells us that he, Darius, with the sole aid of the supreme god Ahura Mazda, led a small band of loyalists, slew the usurper, and crushed a wave of rebellions that erupted across the empire in the ensuing chaos. This is where the hidden messages of persuasion and threat are woven into the text. The relief visually supports this story. It shows the triumphant Darius, his foot placed firmly on the chest of the prone figure of Gonbad-e. Behind him stand two loyal spearmen representing his small but faithful army. Before him, roped together at the neck, is a line of 9 defeated rebel kings, each with a distinct ethnic appearance, representing the various Lyre kings he subdued. Above the entire scene floats the Faravaha, the symbol of Ahura Mazda, extending a ring of power to Darius, visually sanctioning his rule. The message is clear. This victory was not just a military achievement, it was a holy crusade against chaos and falsehood. But historians have long debated the hidden truth within this official story. Some ancient sources, like the Greek historian Herodotus, tell a different tale, suggesting that the real Gonbad-e was indeed killed by Darius in a coup. The Byzantine inscription, then, can also be read as the most expensive and permanent piece of spin doctoring in history. By tirelessly repeating the phrase, "by the favor of Ahura Mazda," Darius grounds his claim not in popular support or even pure lineage, but in direct divine endorsement, making dissent not just treason but blasphemy. The detailed list of defeated rebels serves as a chilling dossier, a warning to any future challengers. Their fate is already carved in stone, a permanent gallery of the defeated. The inscription doesn't just record history, it seeks to dictate it, forever branding Darius not as a usurper, but as a restorer of order, a king chosen by the gods to save the empire from itself. It is a powerful reminder that history is often written by the victors, especially when they have an entire mountainside to write it on. Leaving behind the stark political pronouncements of Byzantium, we now journey even further back in time, to a period over 3 millennia ago, to a structure so alien to the Persian landscape that its original builders called it Dur-Untash, the fortress of Untash. Today, we know it as the magnificent, haunting ziggurat of Chogha Zanbil. Rising from the dusty plains of Khuzestan, it is the best-preserved ziggurat outside of Mesopotamia, a massive, square-set wedding cake of baked brick, slowly yielding its secrets to the desert winds. While it may appear as a colossal pile of ancient rubble, this is a carefully engineered portal to the heavens, a monument where every brick, every angle, and every level was a hidden message in a sacred language of mathematics, astronomy, and profound cosmological belief. The first and most obvious hidden message is in its very form. In the flat river valleys of Elam and Mesopotamia, where no natural mountains existed, the ziggurat was an artificial holy mountain. Its 5 receding tiers, each painted a different color according to some historians, were a symbolic staircase, a bridge connecting the earthly realm of humans with the celestial realm of the gods. The climb to the summit temple was a physical and spiritual ascent, a journey from the profane world below to the sacred space above. This architectural concept was a powerful declaration. The divine was not unreachable, it was simply a matter of ascending the correct man-made path. The entire structure acted as a massive antenna, channeling divine energy down to the earth and raising human devotion up to the skies. But the genius of Chogha Zanbil is found not in its grand silhouette, but in its meticulous, almost obsessive precision. The entire complex is a giant astronomical observatory and a calculator encoded in brick and mortar. The ziggurat was precisely oriented with its corners facing the four cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, with an accuracy that reveals a sophisticated understanding of geometry and celestial movement. This alignment was far from symbolic, it was functional. The stairways built into the structure's sides are believed to have been aligned with the rising and setting of specific stars or constellations on key dates, like the solstices and equinoxes. The play of light and shadow on these staircases at dawn or dusk on those particular days would have marked sacred time, turning the entire ziggurat into a giant sundial and celestial calendar that dictated the rhythm of religious festivals and agricultural life. The 5 levels themselves are thought to represent a layered cosmology, a hidden map of the universe. Each tier likely corresponded to a different element of creation, often interpreted as the underworld, the earthly plane, the atmospheric sphere, the celestial sphere, and finally, the uppermost level, the realm of the high gods. The summit temple, dedicated to the great Elamite god Inshushinak, was the pinnacle of this cosmic order, the meeting point of all these layers. Furthermore, the building materials themselves held meaning. Thousands of baked bricks, many stamped with the name of King Untashnaparisha, were used throughout, but crucially, the most important bricks, those lining the innermost sanctums, were fired to a higher quality and often had glazed decorations. This was a hidden hierarchy of materials mirroring the spiritual hierarchy of the cosmos. The closer to the divine core, the more refined and precious the construction. Perhaps the most enchanting hidden messages are the smallest ones. Embedded within the walls, archaeologists discovered several vaults containing foundation deposits, ritual objects placed to sanctify the building. But more intriguing are the glazed terracotta tubes, almost like hollow rods, found inserted into the corners of the structure. Their exact purpose remains debated, but one compelling theory suggests they were part of a massive plumbing system designed not for water but for sound. It is possible that during ceremonies, priests or musicians at the base of the ziggurat could chant or play instruments. Their voices and music channeled and amplified through these acoustic tubes, emerging as a disembodied, divine symphony from the walls of the upper levels. Imagine the psychological impact on worshippers below, hearing unearthly music seemingly emanating from the very bricks of the holy mountain, a clear message that the gods themselves were present and speaking through this man-made creation. Chogha Zanbil was not a silent monument. It was designed to sing, its hidden voice echoing a forgotten understanding of the universe where architecture, astronomy, and faith were seamlessly and brilliantly intertwined. Now we travel to a place where the very ground seems to breathe with sacred energy, a remote plateau in northwestern Iran that was once one of the most revered sites in the entire Zoroastrian world, Takht-e Solomon, the throne of Solomon. Encircled by a massive stone wall, this fortress complex contains the ruins of a Sassanian-era fire temple, Azar-Goshnasp, one of the 3 great fires of antiquity. But to understand its power, you must look not just at the crumbling walls and arches, but beneath your feet. This entire sanctuary was built with a breathtaking secret hidden in plain sight. It is a direct, physical conversation with the earth itself, a monument designed around a powerful geothermal anomaly that became the very heart of its divine message. The first clue is the location itself. Why build one of the empire's holiest sites here in such a remote and rugged landscape? The answer rises from the center of the complex, a deep, placid, mineral-rich lake, some 120 meters across, its water a startling shade of aquamarine. This is no ordinary lake. It fills the crater of an extinct volcano, and its waters are fed by warm, mineral-laden springs that bubble up from far below. This water, rich in calcium carbonate, has over millennia deposited a massive travertine terrace around the spring, creating the natural throne upon which the complex was built. The Zoroastrians didn't just find a pretty spot. They identified a place where the boundaries between the mundane world and the fiery, creative heart of the planet were visibly thin. The lake was seen not as a body of water, but as a portal, a window into the sacred subterranean realms, and here we find the most brilliant fusion of nature and architecture. The architects of Takht-e Solomon didn't fight this powerful natural force. They channeled it, making the geothermal activity the central character in their theological story. The centerpiece of Zoroastrian worship was the sacred fire, and at Azar-Goshnasp they had a perpetual, divine source of fuel. Natural gas seeping from fissures in the volcanic rock below would have been channeled through ceramic pipes to feed the eternal flame in the temple. For the worshippers, this was not a clever technological trick, it was a miracle made manifest. While other temples had to tend their fires constantly, the fire here was truly eternal, springing directly from the womb of the earth. It was undeniable proof of Ahura Mazda's presence, a flame that needed no human hand to sustain it, burning as a continuous symbol of divine truth and cosmic order. But the architects layered this message even deeper. The complex's design creates a powerful symbolic journey that mirrors Zoroastrian cosmology. A visitor would first approach the massive, fortified outer walls representing the material world. Passing through the gate, they would enter the vast ceremonial precinct, moving from the profane to the sacred. Their path would inevitably lead toward the inner sanctum, the fire temple itself, but to get there, they would have to walk a ritual path that circled the mysterious, bubbling lake. This wasn't a random stroll, it was a physical reenactment of the soul's journey toward enlightenment, moving around the primordial waters of creation before finally arriving at the transformative, purifying fire. The entire complex was a three-dimensional map of the universe, with the lake representing the waters of Varukasha, the mythical sea from which all life sprang, and the eternal fire representing the divine spark of consciousness and wisdom. This ingenious use of natural phenomena served the ultimate hidden message, the harmony of the sacred elements. In Zoroastrianism, the four elements earth, water, air, and fire are all pure creations of Ahura Mazda to be venerated and protected. Takht-e Solomon is a masterclass in this veneration. The earth provides the volcanic foundation and the travertine stone. The water gushes forth, warm and life-giving from the sacred spring. The air feeds the eternal flame and carries the prayers of the faithful, and the fire itself burns with a fuel provided directly by the planet. All four elements are present pure and working in perfect, visible harmony. The sight screamed to every pilgrim that the divine was not an abstract concept in the sky. It was present here and now, in the very physical processes of the world around them. It was a message that true worship was about recognizing and respecting this intricate, beautiful balance, a lesson encoded not in texts, but in the very steam rising from the water and the unquenchable flame burning at the heart of the temple. Our next stop transports us from the spiritual geothermal springs of Takht-e Solomon to a sprawling city of clay, rising like a mirage from the searing heat of the Kavir Desert. This is the Arg-e-Bam, the Bam Citadel, a breathtaking adobe labyrinth that was, for centuries, the largest mud brick structure on Earth. Before a devastating earthquake in 2003, it stood as a near-perfectly preserved time capsule of a desert civilization. To the casual observer, it might appear as a magnificent but simplistic fortress of sand and sun-dried brick. But hidden within its towering walls and winding alleyways is one of history's most sophisticated lessons in sustainable engineering, a masterclass in how to not just survive but truly thrive in one of the planet's most unforgiving environments. The first and most critical hidden message of BAM is one of water. In a place where rainfall is a rare blessing and summer temperatures routinely soar past 120 degrees Fahrenheit, water is not just a resource, it is life itself. The Citadel's architects were hydrological geniuses, and their masterpiece was the Qanat system. This was not a simple well. A Qanat is a gently sloping underground tunnel, sometimes stretching for miles, that taps into water trapped in foothill aquifers and guides it, using only gravity, to the surface in the heart of the city. The brilliance of this system is its efficiency. By running underground, the water is protected from the blistering desert sun, drastically reducing evaporation loss, a vital feature when every single drop counts. The main Qanats feeding dam were the lifelines of the entire region, and their management was a sacred community trust. The hidden message here is profound cooperation. The entire city's survival depended on a meticulously fair and regulated distribution of this water, a system that demanded absolute social harmony and long-term planning. It was a lesson in prioritizing collective need over individual want, encoded in the very plumbing of the city. This water was then distributed through the citadel via a network of channels that displayed a stunning understanding of urban planning and social hierarchy. The water first entered the citadel at its highest point, the Arg, or the ruler's quarters and military barracks. This wasn't just a privilege of power, it was strategic. From there, the water would flow downward, channeled through the main streets to public places like the bazaar, the mosque, and the bathhouse, ensuring the community's central hubs had access. Finally, it would weave through the residential areas, the rabbahs, before eventually being used for irrigation in the vast palm groves that surrounded the city. This wasn't a random flow, it was a deliberate cascading system that served the most critical functions first, but the genius didn't stop at distribution. Throughout the city, you would find strategically placed pools and small reservoirs known as a banbar. These were not merely decorative, they served as cooling stations, their evaporation helping to modestly lower the air temperature in key courtyards and public squares, and as emergency reserves, a buffer against a sudden drop in the Qanat's flow or a prolonged drought. Every element of the water system communicated a message of resilience, foresight, and reverence for the element that made their existence possible. Beyond water, the citadel's design conveyed powerful messages about community and defense. The entire city was a single, integrated fortress, its outer walls presenting a high, blank, and impenetrable face to the outside world. This was a defensive necessity, but it also spoke of a community turned inward, reliant on itself for protection, commerce, and social life. The narrow, winding alleys were not a chaotic maze but a carefully designed deterrent against invading armies, who would find it impossible to maneuver in large groups, turning them into easy targets for defenders on the rooftops above. The houses themselves were built sharing walls, a practical measure that provided mutual structural support and thermal insulation. The thick mud bricks absorbed heat during the day and slowly released it at night, creating a natural temperature regulation system. This architecture fostered an incredible sense of communal interdependence. Your neighbor's wall was your wall, their safety was your safety. The city's layout was a physical manifestation of a social contract, declaring that in the harsh desert, isolation meant death but community meant life. Perhaps the most poignant hidden message of the Arg-e-Bam is one of impermanent permanence. It was built from the very earth it stood on, sun-dried mud bricks and clay mortar. Unlike the stone monuments of Persepolis or Bisoton, it was not built to last for millennia unchanged. It required constant, careful maintenance. Roofs had to be patched after rare rains, walls had to be replastered, and Qanat tunnels had to be regularly cleared of silt. This was not a flaw, it was a philosophy. The citadel was a living entity in a constant, gentle dialogue with the environment that sustained it. It taught that resilience isn't about building something so strong it never changes. It's about building a system, both architectural and social, that can adapt, repair, and endure. It stood for over 2,000 years, not in spite of its earthy materials, but because of them, and because of the enduring wisdom of the people who understood that true strength lies in harmony with nature, not in domination over it. Rising from the flat plains of northern Iran, a single, stark finger of brick pierces the sky with such audacious precision that it seems to defy both time and gravity. This is the Gonbad-e Qabus Tower, a 1,000-year-old monument built for a powerful ruler that is so much more than a mere tomb. It is a silent treatise on the zenith of medieval Persian science, a mathematical sonnet written in brick and mortar, and a celestial compass whose hidden messages are encoded in its breathtakingly simple yet profoundly complex geometry. The first staggering hidden message is its sheer, defiant height. Soaring 55 meters, that's over 180 feet, it is the world's tallest pure brick tower. In an era without modern cranes or steel reinforcement, its construction was a monumental act of engineering bravado. But its purpose was not just to impress, it was to elevate its occupant Qabus ibn Voshmgir, a scholar king of the Ziyarid dynasty, both literally and symbolically closer to the heavens. The tower's form is a perfect cylinder capped by a conical roof, creating a seamless, uninterrupted ascent from the earth to the sky. This was a direct architectural metaphor for the king's journey, a bridge for his soul to traverse from the mortal plane to the celestial sphere. Its solitary dominance over the landscape was a statement of power, but not just earthly power. It declared the king's, and by extension his empire's, mastery over the more elusive domains of science and cosmic order. The true genius of the tower, however, lies in the secret mathematical language woven into its every proportion. The design is based on the precise and intentional use of the golden ratio, a divine proportion of 1 to 1.618, revered for its inherent aesthetic perfection. The height of the tower from its base to the tip of its cone is exactly equal to its diameter at the base multiplied by this golden ratio. This isn't a coincidence, it's a deliberate, sophisticated application of mathematical theory made manifest in architecture. This ratio is repeated throughout the structure, governing the relationship between the height of the cylindrical body and the conical roof, and even the placement of the 10 sharp, triangular buttresses that radiate from its sides like sunbeams. These buttresses are not merely decorative or even just structural. They serve as a giant astronomical calendar. Their precise spacing and the shadows they cast at different times of the day and year would have allowed ancient observers to accurately track the sun's movement, marking the solstices, equinoxes, and the passing hours. The entire structure is a colossal, functional sundial. This leads us to its most captivating hidden function, that of a celestial observatory. The tower is positioned with incredible accuracy along a true north-south axis. Inside, a small, dark chamber at its base features 2 slitted windows. On the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the rising sun would have aligned perfectly with one of these windows, shooting a blade of light into the heart of the pitch-black interior to illuminate the center of the space. This dramatic event would have transformed the tomb into a theater of cosmic alignment, a powerful annual reaffirmation of the king's connection to the solar cycle and the divine order it represented. The tower, therefore, was not a silent sepulchre but an active instrument of knowledge. It fused the king's final resting place with his role as a patron of learning, suggesting that the path to the divine was paved not only by faith but by the rational, meticulous study of the universe. The Gonbad-e Qabus Tower stands as a permanent reminder that for these medieval Persian scholars, science, art, and spirituality were not separate pursuits, but interconnected threads in the same magnificent tapestry of understanding. From the soaring mathematical precision of the Gonbad-e Qabus, we descend into the very streets of a city, not to look up in awe, but to look upward at a forest of silent, soaring towers that gave life to a civilization in the heart of the desert. Welcome to Yazd, a city whose skyline is punctuated by what might be history's most elegant and sustainable answer to a brutal climate, the badger or windcatcher. These are not mere architectural decorations, they are the lungs of the city, a network of ancient air conditioning systems that whisper a hidden message of profound harmony between human ingenuity and the natural world. At its core, a windcatcher is a masterpiece of passive ventilation, a tall, chimney-like structure capped to capture the slightest breeze from high above the city streets, where the air is cooler and almost always moving. But the magic isn't just in capturing the wind, it's in what happens next. the tower channels this cool air downward, funneling it into the heart of the home or building below. To understand the sheer brilliance, you have to follow the air's path. As the cool, dense air is pushed down, it forces the warm, stale air inside to rise and escape through other openings, creating a continuous, self-sustaining cycle of cooling and air exchange, all without a single watt of electricity. Many bagia were built directly over underground waterways or adjacent to a central courtyard pool. As the captured wind is drawn across the surface of this water, it undergoes evaporative cooling, dropping the air temperature even more dramatically before it whispers into the living spaces, transforming scorching desert afternoons into environments of refreshing comfort. Yet, the hidden messages of the wind catcher extend far beyond pure physics. Their design was a sophisticated language that spoke volumes about social status, technological prowess, and even philosophical beliefs. The most obvious differentiator was their number. A simple, single-direction wind catcher might adorn a modest home, catching the prevailing wind from one course. But the grandest structures belonging to the wealthy elite boasted 4-sided or even 8-sided wind catchers. These multidirectional towers were the pinnacle of technological achievement. No matter which way the wind shifted, these structures could capture it, ensuring a constant and reliable flow of cool air. Their sheer size and complexity were undeniable public declarations of wealth and influence, literal pillars of status reaching for the sky. The placement and integration of the bagia within a building also conveyed a deep understanding of social and private life. They were almost always positioned to channel air into the most important rooms of the house, the grand reception hall, or bairuni, where guests were entertained, and the more intimate family quarters, or andaruni. This wasn't just about comfort, it was about honoring guests and protecting the family's private life with the ultimate luxury in a desert environment. Cool, clean, fresh air. The very presence of a badcatcher signaled a household that had mastered its environment, that could create an oasis of civilization and refinement amidst the harshness of the desert. It was a silent promise of hospitality and sophistication, but perhaps the most profound hidden message is one of environmental philosophy. The wind catcher is the antithesis of the modern air conditioner, which fights nature by sealing a space off and consuming vast energy to create an artificial climate. The bagia, by contrast, works with nature. It listens to the wind, respects the properties of air and water, and uses them in a gentle, non-extractive dance. It requires an intimate, localized knowledge of wind patterns, solar orientation, and even the specific acoustics of its tower to tune the airflow just right. This represents a worldview that saw humanity not as separate from or dominant over the environment, but as an integrated participant within it. The people of Yazd didn't seek to conquer the desert. They learned its secrets and adapted to them with elegant, respectful solutions. Each wind catcher standing against the sky is a testament to a sustainable, low-impact way of life that has cooled homes for millennia, offering a timeless lesson in how to live intelligently and harmoniously within our natural world. Now we journey from the self-cooling homes of Yazd to the very arteries of empire, to the long, dusty ribbons of the Silk Road that stitched continents together. And standing like oases of civilization along these treacherous routes were the caravanserais, the great roadside inns of Persia. To the weary traveler, they were simply a welcome sight, a place to rest, to water the camels, to escape bandits and the desert night. But their architecture was far from simple. These were not random collections of rooms, they were carefully coded monuments of stone and clay, broadcasting silent, universal messages of security, order, and cosmopolitan welcome across 1,000 miles of wilderness. The first and most immediate hidden message was one of absolute security. In the vast, lawless spaces between cities, a caravanserai was an island of safety, and its design screamed this fact from the moment it came into view. They were formidable fortresses, often built on a slight rise to command the surrounding terrain. Their outer walls were high, blank, and windowless, presenting a sheer, impenetrable face to the outside world. The sole entrance was through a single, massive, reinforced gate, thick enough to withstand a battering ram, which was bolted shut from inside at dusk. This design sent a clear, non-verbal signal to any caravan approaching from the horizon. Within these walls, you are safe. The threat of predators, human or animal, was literally locked out. The architecture itself was a promise of protection, a guarantee that allowed commerce and cultural exchange to flow freely across the empire, secure in the knowledge that there was a haven at every day's journey. Once inside that mighty gate, the traveler entered a world of perfect, harmonious order, and this was the second hidden message. The layout of a classic Persian caravanserai was almost always a symmetrical square or rectangle centered around a vast open courtyard. This central yard was the beating heart of the complex, a space for unloading goods, watering animals at a central fountain, and socializing. Surrounding it on all four sides was a continuous arcade of identical arched chambers. This rigid symmetry was not an aesthetic choice, it was a powerful communication of fairness and impartiality. Every merchant, whether a local trader or a delegation from Rome or China, was given an identical cell or khane for storage and lodging. There were no better rooms, no privileged spots. The architecture enforced a radical equality, stating that within these walls, all travelers were equally valued guests of the empire. This fairness was essential for fostering trust among the incredibly diverse mix of people who met under this roof. The design prevented conflict by eliminating any visible hierarchy, ensuring that Sogdian and Persian, Christian and Muslim could all coexist peacefully for a night, their cultures mingling in the shared neutral space of the courtyard. This brings us to the third and perhaps most profound hidden message, the caravanserai as an engine of cultural exchange. The architecture actively facilitated this in subtle ways. The raised, shaded portico that ran in front of the cells created a veranda, a semi-private space where merchants could display their wares, engage in negotiation, and share stories without being fully exposed to the elements. The courtyard was a stage for the world. Here, a Byzantine scribe might overhear a Chinese merchant describing papermaking, while a Persian artisan demonstrated a new glazing technique for pottery to an Indian trader. The caravanserai's design, forcing everyone into a shared communal space, broke down barriers. It was a neutral ground where ideas, religions, languages, and technologies could cross-pollinate as freely as the goods carried on the camels. The very existence of this network, spaced a day's journey apart, was a hidden message of imperial power and sophistication. It declared that the Persian king's authority and his commitment to Pax Persica extended even into the deepest desert, enabling not just trade, but the very transmission of civilization itself across the known world. From the functional genius of the caravanserai's grand courtyards, we step into a space where function is utterly transcended by sublime beauty, a space that doesn't just shelter the body, but deliberately dazzles the soul. This is the Nasir al-Mulk Mosque in Shiraz, affectionately known as the Pink Mosque for the vast fields of rose-colored tiles that cover its interior. To call it beautiful is a profound understatement. It is a living, breathing canvas of light and color, and to walk into its winter prayer hall at dawn is to step directly into a kaleidoscope. But this is not mere decoration. It is a deliberate, sophisticated architectural sermon. Every pane of stained glass, every painted petal on a tile, is a verse in a silent, radiant text about the nature of divine reality, a hidden message that unfolds and transforms with the passage of the sun. The first and most overwhelming hidden message is one of divine impermanence and constant transformation. The mosque's architects were masters of chrono-architecture, designing a building that tells time not with a clock but with light itself. The south-facing wall of the winter prayer hall is essentially a massive screen of stained glass, a mosaic of countless colored panes set within a delicate wooden framework. As the sun rises, its rays pierce these windows, projecting a breathtaking, ever-shifting spectacle across the vast Persian carpets and intricately tiled floors. The entire space becomes a dynamic theater. Solid pillars are transformed into rippling bars of emerald green and ruby red. The predictable geometry of the arches is fractured into a dancing, fluid mosaic of light. This hourly metamorphosis is a direct, visceral lesson. It teaches that the world we perceive as solid and static is, in truth, in a state of constant, beautiful flux, a mere reflection of a higher, more dynamic divine reality. The light patterns are never the same twice. You cannot have the same experience twice. This communicates a core mystical concept that God's creation is not a frozen portrait but an ongoing creative event, and to be truly present is to embrace this perpetual state of becoming. This leads to the second profound message, written in the language of color symbolism. In Persian mystical tradition, particularly within Sufism, colors are not arbitrary, they are a lexicon of the spirit. The dominant pink of the mosque's tiles is the color of love, compassion, and the blush of spiritual awakening, the very heart of the Sufi path. The deep blues woven throughout represent the divine truth and the infinite, celestial vault of the heavens. The radiant gold signifies enlightenment and the incorruptible light of the divine essence, and the brilliant greens are the color of paradise, of eternal life and spiritual refreshment. But the genius of Nasir al-Mulk is that these colors are not static. The stained glass acts as a divine filter, mixing and blending these spiritual hues throughout the day. The morning light might wash the space in hopeful gold and awakening pink, while the afternoon sun plunges it into the contemplative depths of blue and green. This is a sermon in color theory, illustrating how the divine attributes love, truth, enlightenment, paradise are not separate qualities but are perpetually interacting, blending, and manifesting in different proportions within the theater of creation. The mosque itself becomes a physical manifestation of the famous unity of being, where all apparent separations dissolve into a harmonious, luminous whole. Finally, the entire experience culminates in a message about the ephemeral nature of earthly existence and the pursuit of divine beauty. The breathtaking light show has a strict schedule. It is at its most intense and brilliant for a relatively short window of time, primarily in the early morning hours. To witness it, you must be there at the right moment, in the right season, with the sun at the correct angle. It is a prize for the early riser, a reward for those who make the effort. This is a powerful metaphor for the spiritual path itself. Enlightenment is not a permanent state one acquires, but a fleeting, precious moment of connection that must be actively sought and cherished. The light is free for all, but it must be received. It cannot be owned or possessed, and just as the brilliant colors fade and shift as the sun moves, so too do our moments of profound clarity and connection in life. They are beautiful precisely because they are transient. The mosque teaches us to appreciate these moments of divine beauty when they grace our lives, to be fully present within them without clinging, understanding that their passing is part of their sacredness. It is a masterclass in non-attachment, using the most enchanting visual poetry to remind us that we are all visitors in a world of temporary, reflected splendor, and that true peace comes from appreciating the light show without demanding it to last forever. Beneath the sun-baked surface of the Iranian plateau, far from the glittering palaces and towering tombs, lies a hidden monument of a different kind, one that is not meant to be seen but to be felt. This is the vast subterranean network of the Achaemenid Qanats, perhaps the most humble yet revolutionary engineering marvel of the ancient world. To call them mere water channels is to call the human circulatory system a series of pipes. These were the lifeblood of an empire, and their construction carried a profound hidden message about the very philosophy of Persian rule. That true power is not the ability to conquer, but the wisdom to sustain. The basic principle of a Qanat is deceptively simple. It is a gently sloping underground tunnel that taps into a water-bearing aquifer at the base of a mountain, and using only the unerring force of gravity, guides that water for miles across the desert to the surface where it is needed. But the simplicity of the concept belies a breathtaking sophistication in execution. The construction of a single Qanat was a monumental communal effort that could take years, even generations. It began with the Mukani, the Qanat diggers, locating the water source. Then, teams of workers would sink a series of vertical shafts down to the water table, sometimes reaching depths of over 100 meters. These shafts were not just for excavation, they were vital for ventilation during the digging of the horizontal tunnel and for maintenance for centuries to come. The horizontal channel itself had to be dug with a precise, consistent slope just enough to keep the water moving, but not so much that it would erode the tunnel walls or arrive with destructive force. This required a genius-level understanding of geology, hydrology, and geometry, knowledge that was passed down through families of Mukani like a sacred trust. This brings us to the first hidden message woven into the very dust of these tunnels, the absolute necessity of cooperation. Unlike a towering palace built by command of a king, a Qanat could not be constructed by decree alone. It required the voluntary buy-in and coordinated labor of an entire community. Every farmer whose field would be watered, every family whose home would be sustained, had a stake in its success. The digging was dangerous, painstaking work, and the financial and physical investment was enormous. The project demanded a long-term perspective that stretched far beyond a single lifetime, fostering a powerful sense of shared destiny and mutual responsibility. The Qanat did not just deliver water, it delivered social cohesion. It physically bound the community together in a shared dependency on this hidden artery, creating a silent, unbreakable contract of collective survival. The message was clear: in the harsh desert, your neighbor's survival is your own. But the Achaemenid emperors, particularly kings like Darius the Great, saw in the Qanat something even greater, a tool of soft power and territorial control. This is the second, more political hidden message. The Persian Empire was vast, encompassing dozens of disparate cultures and climates. Imposing rule over such a diverse realm required more than just military might. It required offering tangible benefits to persuade people that life was better under Persian rule. The imperial sponsorship and construction of massive Qanat systems across the empire, particularly in newly conquered or arid regions, was a masterstroke of political strategy. By bringing life-giving water to barren lands, they enabled the foundation of new cities and the transformation of barren landscapes into lush, productive agricultural centers. This was the ultimate demonstration of the Pax Persica, the Persian peace. It showed subject peoples that their new overlords were not just extractive conquerors but bringers of civilization and prosperity. The Qanat was a silent, continuous ambassador for the crown, a permanent reminder that loyalty to the empire literally made the desert bloom. Control the water, and you control the life, the economy, and ultimately the loyalty of the land. Finally, the Qanat system broadcasts a timeless message about sustainable resource management that feels urgently relevant today. In a world facing water scarcity, the Qanat stands as a monument to elegant, low-impact environmental engineering. Because the water travels entirely underground, it is protected from the scorching sun, with evaporation losses reduced to nearly zero, a critical efficiency in a desert climate. Furthermore, the system is self-regulating. The flow of water is determined solely by the level of the aquifer. In seasons of drought, the flow decreases naturally, preventing the source from being overdrawn and exhausted. In times of plenty, it replenishes itself. This built-in sustainability clause forced communities to live within the means of their environment, to practice conservation by design rather than by choice. There were no pumps to overwork, no aquifers to deplete recklessly. The Qanat taught a philosophy of balance, of taking only what the earth could readily give. It is a 3,000-year-old lesson in listening to nature rather than seeking to dominate it, a hidden message from the past that our future may very well depend on hearing. After exploring the world beneath our feet, we now return to the surface, to a place that holds not water, but the essence of the Persian soul itself. In a quiet garden in Shiraz, shaded by cypress trees and filled with the scent of orange blossoms, lies a monument that seems to breathe with the very spirit of poetry. This is the tomb of Hafez, a sanctuary for a man who never ruled an empire or commanded an army, but whose words have commanded the hearts of millions for over 6 centuries. To the casual visitor, it might appear as a simple, elegant pavilion protecting a marble tombstone, but every element of this cherished site, from the shape of its structure to the verses carved into its stone, is a deeply encoded love letter to the poet's work, a hidden map of his mystical beliefs, and a timeless symbol of Iran's unbreakable cultural identity. The journey into this hidden world begins the moment you step through the gate and enter the garden. The pathway to the tomb is not a straight, imposing boulevard, but a meandering, gentle walk. This is the first deliberate message. In the tradition of the Persian garden or bog, the design is a symbolic recreation of paradise on earth, a walled, protected space of order, beauty, and tranquility. The 4-part layout, often divided by waterways, represents the Zoroastrian division of the universe into 4 quarters. As you walk, you are meant to shed the noise and worries of the outside world, to slow your pace and quiet your mind, preparing your soul for the encounter ahead. The cypress trees, standing tall and eternal, symbolize immortality and the unwavering pursuit of truth, while the fragrant orange and rose bushes represent the beauty and fleeting nature of life. The entire garden is a physical manifestation of the very themes Hafez wrestled with in his poetry: the tension between the eternal and the ephemeral, the divine garden and the earthly tavern. At the heart of this paradise stands the tomb itself, an open, airy pavilion built in the 20th century to replace earlier structures. Its shape is its most immediate hidden code. It is an octagon. In Islamic architecture and Sufi mysticism, the number 8 is profoundly significant. It is the number that represents the threshold between the earthly realm and the divine. The cube, with its 4 sides, symbolizes the material world, while the circle represents the perfection and infinity of God. The octagon is the geometric form that mediates between the two, a symbol of transition and spiritual ascent. By placing Hafez's tomb under an octagonal roof, the architects were making a powerful statement that this poet was a bridge, a guide who could lead the seeker from the confines of the material world toward the boundless love of the divine. The 8 pillars that support the roof further reinforce this, each one acting as a symbolic guardian of this sacred threshold. But the true heart of the monument and the source of its endless fascination lies in the carved marble tombstone at its center. Upon it are engraved 2 complete ghazals or love poems from the master's vast collection, the Divan-e Hafez. This is no random selection of pretty verses. The chosen poems are dense with the hidden language of Sufism, a tradition in which wine represents divine ecstasy. The tavern symbolizes the place of spiritual annihilation, and the beloved's beauty is a mirror reflecting the face of God. For the initiated, reading these verses in this place is an act of deep communion. Yet the hidden message extends even to those who cannot read the elegant Farsi script. The mere presence of the open book of his poetry permanently on display sends an unmistakable signal that Hafez's true monument is not this stone but his living words. The tomb is merely a vessel, the poetry is the eternal content. This interaction between the visitor and the poet's words is the final and most beautiful hidden message of the entire site. Iranians do not simply visit the tomb, they engage with it in a ritual known as Fal-e Hafez, the omen of Hafez. A visitor will come, often in a moment of personal crisis or contemplation, hold a copy of the Divan, concentrate deeply on a question in their heart, and then randomly open the book. The poem they land on is believed to hold a personal message, a clue, or an answer from the poet himself. This practice transforms the tomb from a static memorial into a dynamic oracle. It encodes the belief that Hafez's wisdom is not locked in the 14th century but is alive and directly responsive to the needs of the present. The garden, the octagonal structure, and the inscribed verses all set the stage for this intimate personal dialogue. The tomb does not ask for silent reverence, it invites active conversation. It teaches that the deepest messages are not found in grand pronouncements, but through personal seeking, and that the most enduring legacy is not carved in marble, but lives on in the hearts of those who continue to find meaning, guidance, and solace in a timeless whisper of verse. Now we travel to a natural amphitheater of stone, a place where the very rock face was transformed into a royal canvas for the last great Persian empire before the dawn of Islam. Nestled around a serene spring in the mountains near Kermanshah, the Sassanian reliefs at Tak-e Boston are not merely beautiful carvings, they are a spectacular form of ancient public broadcasting. Created over 3 centuries, these monumental panels were strategically placed along the fabled Silk Road, ensuring a massive audience of traders, diplomats, and travelers. But to see only a king hunting or receiving a crown is to miss the entire point. Every figure, every gesture, and every symbolic detail was a meticulously crafted piece of political communication, a hidden language of power designed to reinforce the Sassanian dynasty's divine right and unmatched authority. The most iconic reliefs here are the grand hunting scenes, and they are anything but simple records of a day's sport. They are epic, symbolic narratives of the king's mastery over the chaotic forces of nature, a metaphor for his control over the empire itself. Take the famed late 4th century panel of King Khosrow Parviz, the largest and most elaborate of all. It depicts 2 royal hunts for boar and deer, but the scale is operatic. The king, mounted on his majestic armored steed, is not merely participating, he is the absolute dominant center of the action. He is shown multiple times within the same frame, a revolutionary artistic technique that conveys his continuous, unstoppable prowess. The surrounding chaos of animals, musicians, and attendants serves only to highlight his serene, unshakable control. This isn't a realistic depiction of a hunt, it's a theological statement. The king is portrayed as the central pillar of cosmic order, effortlessly subduing the wild, untamed forces that threaten civilization. The hidden message to every viewer was clear. Under this king's protection, the empire is safe from any internal or external chaos. Beyond raw power, these reliefs communicated a sophisticated ideology of royal legitimacy through the language of divine investiture. In several panels, we see a king like Ard-Ashir II or Shapur III standing between 2 divine figures. The most common pairing is the supreme deity Ahura Mazda on one side, who is often shown handing the ring of kingship, the Sidaris, to the monarch. On the other side frequently stands the Zoroastrian Yazd, or divinity Mithra, who holds a sacred balsam bundle and blesses the king. This imagery is a powerful visual contract. The king is not seizing power, he is receiving it directly from the hands of the gods themselves. His authority is not derived from popular support or military victory alone. It is divinely ordained and sanctified. By placing himself physically between these 2 deities, the king becomes the literal intermediary between heaven and earth. The hidden message is one of unchallengeable legitimacy. To oppose the king is not just treason, it is to oppose the very will of the divine order, a fool's errand destined to fail. The artists also embedded subtle but crucial messages about imperial ideology and the inclusivity of the Sassanian realm. Look closely at the attire of the courtiers, soldiers, and even the musicians in these scenes. Their clothing, headgear, and weapons are not uniform, they are depicted with distinct ethnic characteristics. This is a deliberate celebration of the vast, multicultural tapestry of the empire, showcasing the many peoples from Central Asians to Armenians who served the Sassanian throne. It visually reinforces the concept of Iransha, the idea of a unified Iranian realm that encompassed diverse cultures under one banner. Furthermore, the choice of location itself was a hidden message. By carving these reliefs at a natural spring, a site already considered sacred for millennia, the Sassanian kings were consciously layering their own legitimacy onto pre-existing layers of reverence. They were connecting their dynasty to the eternal, life-giving forces of the land, presenting themselves not as Chinese letter, but as the natural, rightful heirs to all of Persian history that came before them. The reliefs at Taki Boston were the empire's billboards, and their product was the king himself, a divinely chosen, militarily invincible, and culturally sophisticated ruler whose power was as eternal as the stone that bore his image. From the grand royal proclamations carved into the cliffs of Taki Boston, we now turn inward to a sanctuary of quiet, unwavering devotion that has guarded its flame against the winds of time. In the ancient city of Yazd, a place already renowned for its wind catchers and Zoroastrian heritage, stands the fire temple of Yazd, or etched. Within its unassuming, serene exterior burns the Atash Barum, a Grade 1 fire that has been tended continuously for over 1,500 years. To the casual visitor, the temple is a place of profound peace, its eternal flame burning behind a glass enclosure. But every aspect of this sacred space, from the path one walks to enter it to the very rituals that sustain the flame, is a multi-layered hidden message about one of the world's oldest continuing faiths, communicating profound truths about purity, cosmic order, and the resilience of a community. The first message is written in the temple's location and its approach. Unlike the soaring mosques or grand palaces designed to dominate a skyline, the fire temple is often set back, accessible only after passing through a peaceful garden and a reflective courtyard. This journey is a deliberate architectural metaphor for the Zoroastrian concept of inner purity. Before one can approach the divine represented by the fire, one must first leave the noise and pollution, both physical and spiritual, of the outside world. The transition through calm, green space allows for a mental and spiritual preparation, a shedding of worldly concerns. This subtle design teaches that accessing the divine is not a casual act but a conscious transition into a state of heightened awareness and cleanliness. Step inside and the architecture itself becomes a three-dimensional model of the Zoroastrian cosmos. The central chamber is dominated by the fire itself, housed in a large, ornate brass vessel situated in a sunken area. This placement is deeply symbolic. The fire, as a creation of Ahura Mazda, is the focal point, the axis mundi around which everything else revolves. The chamber is often capped by a dome, not unlike the Sheikh Lotfollah Mosque, but here the symbolism is different. The dome represents the firmament, the celestial sphere of the heavens, while the square floor represents the material earth. This architectural marriage of circle and square is an ancient representation of the connection between the divine and the earthly realms. The fire burning at the center is the conduit between the two, the means by which prayers and devotion ascend to the Creator. The entire layout is a hidden map, reinforcing the core belief that humanity's role is to maintain this sacred connection and uphold the order of the universe. Now consider the fire itself. This is no ordinary flame. To achieve the status of Atash Barum, the highest grade of fire, it must be purified through an incredibly elaborate and lengthy ritual that can take over a year to complete. It is assembled from 16 different types of fire, gathered from sources representing all strata of society, including fires from a baker's oven, a goldsmith's forge, and a lightning strike. This arduous process is a hidden message in itself, a profound lesson in unity and inclusivity. The resulting eternal flame is not a singular, elite entity but a collective one, embodying the essence of the entire community, from the laborer to the artisan. It symbolizes that the divine is present in all honest work and all aspects of a harmonious society. The fire becomes a living symbol of the community itself, diverse in its origins but unified in its sacred purpose. The most continuous hidden message, however, is found in the unbroken, millennia-long ritual of its maintenance. The fire is never left alone. A succession of priests or dasters attends to it in shifts, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, feeding it solely with sandalwood and frankincense to keep its purity. This eternal vigilance is a powerful performance of the Zoroastrian duty to actively fight against chaos and decay, represented by darkness and extinction. The priest who carefully places each piece of wood is not just a caretaker. He is a soldier on the front lines in the cosmic battle between good and evil, ensuring that the symbol of truth and light never falters. This ritual broadcasts a message of unwavering responsibility, a covenant between the community and the divine that they will be the guardians of this light, no matter the political turmoil or social change happening outside the temple walls. Finally, the temple's design and rituals contain coded instructions for worship and community identity. The fire is enclosed behind a glass barrier not for display, but to protect it from the human breath of visitors, which is considered a potential pollutant. This teaches the concept of maintaining purity, not just attaining it. The positioning of the fire at a lower level forces the worshipper to look downward into its heart, a gesture of humility before the divine, rather than arrogantly looking upward to demand something. For the Zoroastrian community, particularly during centuries of hardship and migration, this temple and its flame have been the ultimate hidden message of survival. It is a portable homeland, the ability to keep a fire burning for 15 centuries through invasions, persecutions, and the pressures of modernity, is a silent, stunning declaration of identity. It says, "We are still here, our covenant with the divine remains unbroken. Our light has not been and will never be extinguished." The temple is not just a building housing a fire, it is the heart of a people, and its steady, rhythmic pulse is a timeless promise of endurance. Perched on a remote, wind-swept plateau in what is now northwestern Iran, the Armenian monastery of St. Thaddeus rises from the stark landscape like a vision in black and white. Known locally as Kara Kelisa, or the Black Church, for the dark stone of its ancient core, this sacred complex is far more than a solitary outpost of Christianity. It is a stunning architectural dialogue, a stone and mortar chronicle of a rare and enduring religious coexistence that has defied centuries of political and theological turmoil. To walk through its courtyards is to read a hidden message of cultural synthesis, where Armenian faith and Persian artistry intertwine to create a sanctuary that belongs to both worlds. The first and most profound hidden message is written in the very stones used to build it. The monastery's oldest section, dating back to the 7th century, is constructed from dark, local volcanic rock, giving it that formidable, stark appearance. But the expansions and renovations, particularly those undertaken in the early 19th century with the support of the Qajar dynasty, are built from brilliant white limestone. This striking black and white checkerboard pattern is not merely an aesthetic choice, it is a bold, visual metaphor for harmony and unity. The dark and light stones are locked together, each one essential to the structural and visual integrity of the whole. They represent the inseparable bond between the ancient Armenian Christian community and their Muslim Persian rulers and neighbors. It is a permanent declaration that these two communities, though distinct in faith, are fundamentally interconnected, supporting and strengthening one another to create something more beautiful and resilient than either could alone. This theme of synthesis is then echoed in the architectural details that adorn the complex. While the overall form is unmistakably that of a classic Armenian church, with its distinctive conical dome and cruciform plan, a closer look reveals a host of subtle Persian influences woven into the sacred fabric. The intricate floral and geometric patterns carved into the white stone around windows and entranceways are pure examples of Islamic art, their endless, interlocking repetitions symbolizing the infinite nature of God in a way that seamlessly complements the Christian iconography inside. Even the iconic Armenian kochkars, the beautifully ornate cross stones that fill the courtyard, are framed by designs that would feel perfectly at home in a Persian palace or mosque. This is not a case of one culture imposing its will upon another, but rather a graceful, respectful exchange. The hidden message is one of mutual appreciation, a recognition that beauty and devotion are universal languages that transcend religious doctrine. Perhaps the most powerful testament to this coexistence is not found in the architecture itself, but in the stories that have sustained the monastery for over a millennium. For centuries, the monastery has been the site of an annual pilgrimage, a vast gathering that draws thousands of Armenian Christians from across Iran and beyond. The hidden message here is in the fact that this pilgrimage has been allowed to continue and even flourish under successive Muslim-ruled governments. The Qajar Shahs in particular are recorded not just as tolerating the site, but as its active patrons, providing funds and materials for its restoration. This patronage was a brilliant political and spiritual strategy. By protecting this important Christian site, Persian rulers demonstrated the inclusive nature of their rule, showcasing a kingdom where diverse religious communities could thrive under the umbrella of the state. The monastery became a living symbol of the Persian concept of dhimmi, a protected status for people of the book, which in its ideal form was not about suppression, but about respectful coexistence within a diverse empire. Thus, the monastery of St. Thaddeus stands as a quiet rebuttal to the simplistic narrative of eternal religious conflict. Its hidden message is not one of conquest or conversion, but of conversation. It speaks of a world where identities could be layered, where one could be both a devout Armenian Christian and a loyal subject of the Persian Shah. The black and white stones, the fused architectural styles, and the history of patronage all whisper the same truth, that faiths can meet not on a battlefield but on common ground, building something sacred together that honors their differences while celebrating their shared humanity. It is a monument that doesn't just ask for tolerance, but actively demonstrates the breathtaking beauty that is possible when it is achieved. Now, we descend from the soaring spiritual heights of monasteries and temples and plunge directly into the roaring, churning heart of ancient industry. Our journey brings us to the historical hydraulic system of Shushtar, a sprawling, awe-inspiring complex of dams, tunnels, canals, and watermills that transforms the entire city into a living, breathing monument to water itself. Unlike a solitary tomb or palace, this is not a single structure but a vast, interconnected machine carved directly into the bedrock of the Karan River. To the untrained eye, it might look like a chaotic jumble of ancient ruins, but this is in fact one of the most sophisticated pre-industrial engineering feats on Earth, a site that broadcasts hidden messages about the absolute mastery of nature and the intricate social contract required to harness it. The sheer scale of ambition is the first message, written in the relentless flow of the river. The system's centerpiece is a massive diversion dam, a colossal wall of stone that boldly forces the powerful Karan, Iran's most water-rich river, to bend to human will. This was not a timid project. It was a declaration of supremacy over the most fundamental and unpredictable force of nature. The dam doesn't just block the water, it intelligently redirects it into a hand-cut diversion canal that feeds the entire network. This act of splitting the river required a breathtaking understanding of hydrology, physics, and sheer brute force perseverance. The hidden message in this initial act is one of confidence, the unshakable belief that human ingenuity could not only coexist with a mighty river but could partner with it, transforming its destructive potential into a life-giving resource for an entire civilization. This redirected water then performs a breathtaking ballet of precision, and its choreography reveals the second layer of hidden knowledge, the water is channeled into a series of underground tunnels or maganals that weave through the bedrock beneath the city before bursting out into a spectacular cliff-face waterfall, cascading into a natural basin below. This is where the true genius unfolds. The flow of water was meticulously calibrated to power a series of watermills, their wheels turned by the carefully managed force of the falling water. But the system was so much more than a mill complex. It was a multi-tool of incredible sophistication. The same water that turned the millstones to grind flour was also channeled to irrigate vast swaths of farmland, creating a verdant oasis in the surrounding desert, and then further directed to provide drinking water and sanitation for the city itself. This cascading multi-use design is a hidden lesson in perfect efficiency, a closed-loop system where every single drop of water was made to work multiple jobs before returning to the river. It speaks of a culture that viewed resources not as something to be consumed and wasted, but as a sacred trust to be maximized and recycled with reverent intelligence. Yet, the most profound messages of Shushtar are not etched in stone, but in the fabric of the society that built and maintained it. A project of this magnitude and complexity could never have been the work of a single tyrant or a small elite. It required the coordinated labor and specialized skills of thousands of engineers, stonemasons, laborers, and surveyors working in concert for generations. This implies a staggering level of social organization, a hidden message about a community capable of long-term planning and collective action on a scale that rivals the building of pyramids. The knowledge required to maintain the delicate balance of water flow, to clear silt from tunnels, and to repair stonework was not written in books. It was passed down through guilds and families, a sacred oral tradition of engineering that bound the community together across centuries. The system itself was the teacher, and its continuous operation was the exam. This created a society of experts where the collective well-being was directly tied to the preservation of shared, hard-won knowledge. Furthermore, the distribution of the water's benefits encoded a powerful social contract. The water flowing from the mills irrigated the fields of the entire region, meaning that a baker in the city and a farmer on the outskirts were linked by the same aquatic lifeline. This created a powerful web of mutual dependency. The city depended on the farmer's wheat, the farmer depended on the city's engineered water, and everyone depended on the engineers and laborers who kept the system running. This interdependency fostered a unique form of social cohesion and likely influenced the development of local governance, with water rights and maintenance duties being among the most crucial laws of the land. The hidden message here is that true engineering is not just about conquering nature, but about structuring a society that can sustainably manage its gifts. The roaring waterfalls of Shushtar are not just a spectacle of nature tamed. They are the thunderous applause for a human community that achieved a perfect, harmonious balance between technology, nature, and society, a lesson in sustainability that echoes powerfully across the millennia. Amidst the arid climate of Iran, the creation of a lush, vibrant garden is itself a profound act of defiance and symbolism. Nowhere is this truer than at the Aram Garden in Shiraz, a living monument that transcends mere horticulture to become a philosophical treatise written in cypress trees, flowing water, and fragrant blossoms. To stroll through Aram is not simply to enjoy a beautiful park. It is to walk through a meticulously coded representation of the Persian concept of paradise, a hidden map of the universe that explores humanity's ideal relationship with the divine and the natural world. The first and most powerful hidden message is the garden's very existence. In the heart of a dry landscape, this explosion of life is a direct manifestation of the ancient Zoroastrian reverence for the sacred elements, particularly water. The entire design is an orchestrated celebration of this life-giving force. A central water channel reflecting the Zoroastrian reverence for flowing water bisects the garden, fed by a Qanat that taps into distant aquifers. This channel is the garden's spine, its unwavering axis of symmetry. From it, smaller streams branch off like veins, delivering hydration to every corner of the planted beds. This isn't just efficient irrigation. It is a symbolic recreation of the four rivers of paradise described in both Zoroastrian and Islamic texts, which are said to flow from a central source to the four corners of the world. The gentle, continuous sound of moving water provides a constant auditory backdrop, a hidden message of abundance, purity, and the divine grace that sustains all life. This flowing water leads the visitor's eye and feet inevitably toward the garden's crown jewel, the magnificent Kavam House Pavilion. The placement of this elegant structure is a masterclass in architectural hierarchy. It sits not at the beginning of the journey, but at its culmination, perfectly aligned with the central water axis. To reach it, one must first traverse the length of the garden, immersing oneself in the natural world. This path is a deliberate metaphor for the human journey toward enlightenment and civilization. One moves from the raw, untamed world outside the walls through the cultivated, ordered nature of the garden, finally arriving at the pinnacle of human artistry and intellect represented by the pavilion. The building itself, with its intricate mirrorwork, stained glass, and poetic inscriptions, becomes a symbol of the refined human spirit that can only flourish when in harmony with a nurtured environment. It does not dominate the garden but rises from it, a testament to the idea that true civilization is not separate from nature but is its most beautiful and conscious flowering. Every plant within Aram's walls is a carefully chosen character in this living allegory. The towering, ancient cypress trees, some of which are centuries old, are not there by accident. In Persian poetry and art, the cypress symbolizes eternity, resilience, and a direct connection to the heavenly realm. Their upward-reaching forms are like green arrows pointing toward the divine. In contrast, the delicate fruit trees, the bitter oranges, pomegranates, and figs represent the bittersweet beauty and fertility of the earthly plane, the cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth. The fragrant rose bushes, for which Shiraz is famed, embody love, spiritual passion, and the fleeting, intoxicating beauty of the present moment. The garden's design forces these elements into a harmonious dialogue. The eternal cypresses and the seasonal roses grow side by side, a constant visual reminder that the transient and the eternal are not opposites, but intertwined parts of a single, coherent whole. This is the hidden message of the planting scheme. A complete life acknowledges and embraces both the everlasting and the ephemeral. Ultimately, the Aram garden is a physical manifesto of the Persian ideal of paradisa, a walled garden, which is the root of our word paradise. The high walls are not meant to exclude, but to define and protect a perfected microcosm of the world. Within this sanctuary, the harshness of the desert is replaced by regulated shade, the scarcity of water is replaced by managed abundance, and the chaos of the wild is replaced by elegant geometric order. This controlled environment represents humanity's highest calling, not to conquer nature, but to collaborate with it to become a co-creator of beauty and balance. The garden is a prayer in physical form, a hidden message that paradise is not a distant reward but a state of being that can be achieved here on earth through harmony, reverence, and intelligent design. It teaches us that our relationship with nature should be one of stewardship and creative partnership, and that by building our own small Edens, we mirror the divine order of the cosmos itself. Tucked away in a fertile valley near the ancient city of Gore, far from the bustling trade routes and imperial centers, stands a monument of audacious ambition. This is the palace of Ardashir I, founder of the Sassanian Empire, built not as an addition to an existing city but as a bold declaration of a new beginning. After the decline of the Parthians, Ardashir didn't just want to conquer. He sought to resurrect the glory of the ancient Achaemenid Persians while ushering in a new, divinely sanctioned era. His palace, constructed in the 3rd century, is a stunning architectural manifesto, and every stone, from its revolutionary dome to its strategic placement, is a layered message about the nature of his power and the spiritual destiny of his reign. The first and most groundbreaking hidden message is written in the very fabric of the palace's roof, one of the earliest large-scale uses of a true dome on squinches in Persia. Before this innovation, large spaces were spanned with wooden beams or vaults, but Ardashir's architects dared to crown his central reception hall with a massive brick dome, creating a vast, uninterrupted interior space. This was a breathtaking technical achievement, but its purpose was far more than structural. The dome was a powerful cosmological symbol. It represented the vault of heaven itself, the firmament of the celestial sphere under which the king, the center of his political universe, would hold court. Anyone standing before Ardashir in this hall would have felt psychologically dwarfed, not just by the king, but by the immense, soaring space above him, a space that visually connected the monarch to the divine order of the cosmos. This architectural innovation was a hidden message of supreme authority. The new king didn't just rule the land, his power echoed the very structure of the heavens. This connection to the celestial is further emphasized by the palace's deliberate and symbolic orientation. The entire complex is positioned with stunning precision to face north, directly aligned with a nearby fire temple atop a hill, which itself is aligned with the majestic nearby mountain. This wasn't a random choice of a pretty view. It created a sacred axis, a direct visual and symbolic line connecting the three most powerful elements in Ardashir's ideology: the mountain, an ancient and enduring symbol of power and permanence; the fire temple, the heart of the Zoroastrian faith he sought to revitalize; and his own royal palace, the seat of his new government. This alignment sent an unmistakable message: the king's political authority, the religious purity of the state, and the eternal strength of the land were now one and the same, inseparably linked in a divine triad. To serve the king was to serve the faith and the nation. The organization of the palace's interior spaces continues this narrative of power and ritual. The layout is a sophisticated sequence of increasing exclusivity and importance. One would first enter a more public, ceremonial court before being led through a series of iwans or vaulted halls that gradually funnel visitors toward the most sacred space, the central domed throne room. This carefully choreographed path was a physical progression into the heart of royal power. It mimicked a spiritual journey, moving from the profane outside world into the Holy of Holies. The design ensured that by the time an ambassador or subject reached the king, they had been psychologically prepared by the grandeur of the architecture, their sense of anticipation and reverence built with every step. The palace itself was performing the ritual of awe before the audience even began. Even the materials and decorative elements, though less preserved, carried profound meaning. The walls were once covered in brilliant white plaster, a stark contrast to the surrounding brown hills. From a distance, the palace would have shimmered like a pearl, a radiant beacon of order and civilization carved into the wilderness. This whiteness symbolized purity, a clean break from the past and the establishment of a new, righteous order. While most of the figurative decorations are gone, the few remaining stucco fragments and the accounts of historians suggest the walls were adorned with scenes of Ardashir's victory over the last Parthian king, Artabanus IV. This would have transformed the palace walls into a permanent newsreel, broadcasting the foundational myth of the new regime. The moment the rightful Zoroastrian-backed king overthrew the corrupt old order. Every element, from the grand dome to the polished floors, worked in concert to tell a single story: that Ardashir was not merely a ruler, but a restorer of a lost golden age, a divinely chosen monarch whose authority was as solid as the stone of his palace and as vast as the sky above it. Perched on remote, barren hilltops outside of Yazd, you'll find haunting, circular structures that stand as silent sentinels against the sky, the Zoroastrian dakmas or towers of silence. To the untrained eye, they appear as simple, crater-like rings of stone, isolated and austere, but these are not mere ruins or forgotten amphitheaters. They are sacred, functional architecture, and every aspect of their design, their location, their shape, their stark simplicity contains a layered, hidden message about one of the world's oldest continuous religions, its profound reverence for nature, and its unique vision of the soul's journey. The most immediate and challenging question is why? Why would a people choose such a method for their departed? The answer is the first and most profound hidden message, one of absolute reverence for the natural elements. In Zoroastrian belief, the earth, fire, and water are considered sacred, direct creations of the supreme god, Ahura Mazda. To bury a body in the earth would pollute the soil, to cremate it would defile the fire, to submerge it would contaminate the water. Death and the subsequent decay of the physical form is seen as the temporary triumph of the evil spirit, Angra Mainyu. The body becomes Nasu, impure matter. The solution, then, was both practical and deeply spiritual. Exposure to the one element that could not be polluted, the sun and the sky, and to the scavenging birds that inhabit that realm. This practice, known as sky burial, was seen as the purest, most ecologically respectful way to return the body to the cycle of nature, allowing the soul to be freed unencumbered by the corruption of its former vessel. This core belief is physically encoded into the tower's architecture. The location on a high, remote hilltop serves multiple symbolic purposes. Firstly, it elevates the ritual above the community, both literally and metaphorically, isolating the impurity of death from the purity of daily life. The difficult ascent ensured that only the designated nacelers or corpse-bearers would handle the body, protecting the wider community from spiritual contamination. But the elevation also brings the deceased closer to the sun, that mighty agent of purity and life, and to the vultures that act as divine agents. The circular design of the tower itself is not arbitrary. The flat stone floor is divided into 3 concentric rings, an outer ring for men, a middle ring for women, and an innermost ring for children. This organization reflects the structure of the community even in its final rite of passage. At the very center stands a central well or pit where the bones, bleached and dried by the sun, would eventually be collected after the vultures had done their work. Lime was added to aid in their gradual, clean dissolution. The entire process was a patient, natural recycling, a final offering of the physical self back to the cosmos. Perhaps the most powerful hidden message, however, is one of ultimate equality and the ephemeral nature of the physical form. Within the ring of the Dakma, there were no grand mausoleums, no ornate sarcophagi, no markers of wealth or status. The king and the commoner received the same right. The body was stripped of all clothing and possessions, laid bare upon the stone under the vast, open sky. This was the final surrender of the ego, the ultimate statement that in death all earthly distinctions are meaningless. The only thing that mattered was the soul's journey. The vultures, often mischaracterized as grim, were revered as sacred facilitators. Their swift and efficient work completing the process in a matter of hours was seen as a blessing, a sign that the soul had been quickly released from its earthly prison. The tower, therefore, becomes a powerful machine for spiritual transition, its design ensuring a swift, clean, and dignified return of the elements to their source, allowing the soul to begin its celestial judgment and journey toward the afterlife. It stands as a silent, stoic monument not to death, but to the triumph of the eternal spirit over the temporary body. Imagine a city within a city, a sprawling, covered labyrinth where the air hums with the echoes of 1,000 years of commerce. This is the historical bazaar of Tabriz, an UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the oldest and largest covered markets on Earth. To step inside is to travel back to the zenith of the Silk Road, but this is far more than a collection of shops. It is a monumental archive of economic and social intelligence. Its very architecture, the twist of its corridors, the grouping of its guilds, the placement of its inns, is a hidden language, a meticulously designed code that organized a global trade network and facilitated a breathtaking exchange of cultures. The first hidden message is one of supreme order amidst apparent chaos. The bazaar is not a random maze, it is a highly organized urban matrix, a direct physical manifestation of the medieval Persian economy. The entire complex is divided into a series of specialized sub-bazaars or rastes, each one dedicated to a specific guild or type of goods. You would find the Raste-e Sarafan, the street of the moneychangers and bankers, its vaulted corridors secure and imposing, speaking of the trust and stability required for high finance. Not far away, the Raste-e Javasazan, the street of the jewelers, would be more discreet, perhaps with narrower lanes and stronger doors protecting precious commodities. This deliberate segregation was a masterstroke of urban planning. It created centers of expertise, allowing buyers to easily compare quality and price, fostering healthy competition among masters of the same craft. For a trader arriving from Venice or Samarkand, this organization was a godsend. He didn't need to wander aimlessly, the architecture itself guided him. If he carried spices, the very design of the bazaar, the subtle cues of scent and sound, would lead him directly to the spice dealer's raste, where he could immediately engage with experts who understood the precise value of his cargo. The layout was a silent, efficient directory, compressing the vast, complex world of Eurasian trade into a logical, navigable system. This organization also encoded a sophisticated social and cultural hierarchy. The location of each guild within the bazaar's geography was not accidental. The most prestigious and valuable trades, like the jewelers and silk merchants, were often positioned along the primary, most accessible arteries, their wealth and importance literally central to the flow of traffic. Other essential but perhaps less glamorous crafts, like tanners or coppersmiths, might be located on peripheral lanes or in areas with better ventilation, a practical consideration that also subtly reflected their place in the social order. Furthermore, each raste was more than just a marketplace, it was a self-contained community center. Many included their own small mosque, a public bath hammam, and even a tea house. This design sent a powerful message about the guild system, that one's profession was not separate from one's spiritual, social, and personal life. It fostered a powerful sense of collective identity and mutual responsibility among the artisans, binding them together not just as competitors, but as a brotherhood with a shared stake in maintaining the quality and reputation of their craft. The bazaar's architecture, therefore, was a machine for building social cohesion, ensuring that the engine of commerce was powered by stable, interdependent communities. Perhaps the most profound hidden messages of the Tabriz Bazaar are found in its caravanserais, the great inns woven seamlessly into its fabric. These were not separate structures but integral components of the trade machine. A caravanserai within the bazaar, like the magnificent Amir caravanserai, was a secure courtyard surrounded by 2 levels of rooms, stables and storage on the ground floor for goods and animals, and lodging for the merchants on the upper floor. Their placement was strategic. A caravanserai dealing in goods from the Ottoman Empire might be situated near the main entrance from the west, while one specializing in Central Asian wares would be closer to the eastern gates. This was a logistical blueprint for efficiency, minimizing the distance traveled by valuable and heavy cargo. But these courtyards were far more than logistical hubs. They were the epicenters of cultural cross-pollination. Within the secure walls of the Amir caravanserai, a Persian carpet merchant might negotiate with a Turkish trader over cups of tea, while a Russian fur dealer shared stories with an Armenian silk broker. Languages, religions, and customs mingled here as freely as the goods. The architecture created a neutral, secure ground, a microcosm of the Pax Mongolica, or later the Pax Persica, where trust could be built across cultural divides. The deals struck in these courtyards were about more than profit. They were the threads that wove together the disparate cultures of continents, transmitting not just spices and textiles, but ideas, artistic motifs, and technologies. The Tabriz Bazaar, through its brilliant and intentional design, stands as a permanent testament to a time when commerce was not a mere transaction, but the very heartbeat of global connection. In the wake of the Mongol conquests, an event often depicted in history as an unmitigated catastrophe for civilization, a remarkable act of defiance emerged not from the battlefield but from the mind of a scholar. In the city of Tabriz, the powerful vizier Rashid al-Din Hamadani conceived something unprecedented, a vast, self-contained academic city known as the Rabi Rashidi. While the world outside was being reshaped by the sword, Rashid al-Din built a fortress for the mind, and within its walls he embedded a complex hidden message about the immortality of knowledge and the meticulous organization required to safeguard it through the darkest of times. The first and most profound message was the complex's very existence. Erected during the reign of the Ilkhanid rulers, the Rabi Rashidi was a bold statement that the new Mongol dynasty was not just a destructive force, but could become a patron of culture and learning. The name itself, meaning the Quarter of Rashid, hinted at its purpose. This was not a single building but a miniature city dedicated solely to the pursuit of knowledge, complete with libraries, hospitals, mosques, workshops, and residences. Its sprawling, walled design was a physical declaration that intellectual life required protection and seclusion to flourish, especially in an era of political upheaval. By creating this sanctuary, Rashid al-Din argued that the true foundation of a lasting empire was not military might, but the cultivation of wisdom, science, and the arts. The complex stood as a permanent rebuttal to the notion that the Mongols were mere destroyers, positioning them instead as the unexpected guardians of a renaissance. But the true hidden codes of the Rabi Rashidi are found not in its ruined walls, but in the survival of its extraordinary endowment deed, the Waqfnameh. This document is far more than a dry legal text. It is a breathtakingly detailed blueprint for running a medieval university, a secret manuscript that has preserved the entire operational soul of the institution. Rashid al-Din, with almost obsessive foresight, encoded every aspect of intellectual life within its clauses. The Waqfnameh specifies the exact curriculum, dividing knowledge into distinct schools of thought and practice. It meticulously outlines the salaries for everyone from renowned professors and surgeons down to the cooks, cleaners, and even the students themselves, who received a stipend to ensure that poverty was never a barrier to learning. This egalitarian provision was a radical hidden message about the democratization of knowledge, ensuring that intellectual pursuit was a valued profession worthy of financial support. The architectural layout, as described in the deed, was itself a three-dimensional model of this intellectual hierarchy and daily rhythm. The complex was carefully zoned. Libraries and scriptoriums, where manuscripts were copied and illuminated, formed the Sacred Heart. Residential quarters for students and scholars were positioned nearby, fostering a continuous, immersive learning environment. Workshops for bookbinding, papermaking, and even pharmacology were integrated into the design, emphasizing the vital link between theoretical knowledge and practical, applied science. This wasn't just a place to study medicine. It was a place to diagnose patients in the on-site hospital, compound remedies in the lab, and then write the findings down in a book produced within the same walls. The architecture silently preached that true knowledge is a cycle, moving seamlessly from thought to action to documentation. Perhaps the most ingenious and subtle hidden message was the system for ensuring the authenticity and unbroken transmission of texts. The Waqfnameh describes a meticulous process for copying texts in the scriptorium. A single master copy of each book was kept under lock and key. Scribes were only permitted to make copies from this master, and each new copy was then meticulously collated against the original to eliminate errors before it could enter circulation. This created an unbreakable chain of accuracy, a built-in immune system against the gradual corruption of knowledge that occurs through sloppy transcription. This system guaranteed that a student in any future generation would be reading the exact same words as their predecessor centuries before. It was a silent war against misinformation and intellectual decay, a message that the purity of an idea is as important as the idea itself. The Rabi Rashidi, through its hidden architectural and administrative codes, stands as a timeless testament to the idea that civilization is not stored in stone monuments, but in the living, breathing, and meticulously preserved word. Flowing through the very heart of Isfahan, the Zayende-Rud River was more than just a source of water. It was a stage for some of the Safavid Empire's most breathtaking architectural performances. Across its width, the dynasty's engineers and artists constructed a series of bridges that were far more than mere crossings. They were dynamic public spaces, marvels of hydraulic engineering, and profound philosophical statements carved in stone. The most magnificent of these, the Coc Pol and the Koju Bridge, stand today not as silent relics, but as enduring lessons in how to weave together the practical and the poetic, turning simple infrastructure into a symphony of hidden messages. Let's begin with the grandest of them all, the Coc Pol, or the Bridge of 33 Spans. At first glance, its sheer length and the relentless repetition of its arches are a stunning display of power and stability. But the hidden message is in the harmonic rhythm of those very arches. The bridge is built with two tiers of arches, a lower, broader set that does the primary work of channeling water, and an upper, narrower row that supports the roadway. This double-decker design was a stroke of genius for managing the river's fluctuating flow. During the dry season, the river would shrink to a gentle stream, flowing through just a few central arches. But during spring snowmelt, the entire structure would come alive, with water roaring through every single span, demonstrating the bridge's resilience and the Safavid mastery over a sometimes unpredictable nature. The choice of 33 arches is itself believed to be significant, potentially linked to the number of years of Christ or a sacred number in Sufi mysticism, subtly encoding a spiritual layer into the engineering. Yet the true magic of Coc Pol is not just in holding back water, but in how it creates a world atop it. The broad, paved deck is wide enough to feel like a grand promenade or a monumental boulevard, not just a thoroughfare for getting from one bank to the other. This was a space designed for people to see and be seen, to stroll, to socialize, and to engage in the life of the city. Its hidden message is one of civic unity and connection. By creating such a magnificent and inviting public space over the water, the bridge literally and metaphorically connected the two halves of the Safavid capital, weaving the Armenian neighborhood of New Julfa with the imperial center on the other side. It proclaimed that the strength of the empire lay not in division, but in the beautiful, flowing connections between its diverse people. If Coc Pol is the public square, then the Koju Bridge, located just downstream, is the intimate salon. While it also features a double tier of arches, its purpose and personality are entirely distinct. Koju is not merely a bridge, it is a band or a dam. At its center, a series of sluice gates were built between the piers, allowing officials to regulate the water level upstream for irrigation purposes. The sound of water crashing through these gates adds a constant, powerful auditory dimension to the experience, a reminder of the utilitarian heart that powers the beauty. But the Safavids would never let function stand alone. Above this hydraulic machinery, they built a stunning central pavilion, a space that was once reserved for the Shah and his court. From this vantage point, the ruler could not only enjoy the view, but also observe the lifeblood of his empire, the water and the people flowing beneath him. This pavilion is the key to unlocking Koju's deepest hidden messages. It was designed as a place of profound artistic and philosophical contemplation. The interior walls, though faded, still show traces of exquisite tilework and fragments of poetry, and the architecture itself is an acoustic marvel. The vaulted ceilings and carefully arranged spaces create remarkable echo effects, It is said that if you stand in one specific spot beneath the central dome and speak softly, you can be heard perfectly on the opposite side, while those standing just a few feet away hear nothing. This was not an accident. It was a deliberate design feature that transformed the pavilion into a space for sharing secrets, for reciting poetry, or for intimate musical performances where the sound would carry with crystal clarity to the intended listener. This incredible acoustic property transforms the bridge from a simple structure into an instrument of connection, privileging intimate, focused communication over the public bustle of Persepolis. Together, these two bridges present a complete Safavid philosophy of governance and art. Persepolis, with its grand scale and open promenade, represents the public face of the empire, powerful, inclusive, and magnificently organized. Qanats Bridge, with its dual role as dam and artistic salon, represents the intellectual and utilitarian core, a government that managed resources with precision while also cultivating the highest forms of beauty, poetry, and music. One bridge is an extrovert connecting communities in a grand, open-handed gesture. The other is an introvert, a place of refined sensibility and whispered secrets. They teach us that true civilization requires both, the robust engineering to sustain life and the exquisite artistry that makes life worth living, and that even something as straightforward as a bridge can be a deep meditation on the nature of connection itself. Towering above the dense, rain-soaked forests of northern Iran, the castle of Rudkan is a masterclass in strategic intimidation. Reaching it requires a demanding climb up hundreds of steps, a journey that itself is the first and most potent hidden message this fortress broadcasts. Its remote, near-inaccessible location on a 700-meter peak was not chosen for solitude, but for psychological dominance. Long before an enemy ever saw its walls, they would be exhausted and demoralized by the arduous ascent, while the defenders above remained fresh, perched in an imposing position that surveyed every approach for miles. This was a statement of absolute control over the terrain, a declaration that any assault would be a grueling uphill battle against a prepared and patient foe. But the true genius of Rudkan's hidden language is revealed in its revolutionary double-wall design, a feature that separates it from most contemporary fortresses. The entire complex is divided into two distinct, self-contained sections, a military barracks on the eastern slope and the royal citadel to the west. Each is protected by its own formidable curtain wall, punctuated by 42 massive guard towers that project outward from the stonework. This architectural choice communicates a sophisticated understanding of layered defense and the psychology of a siege. If an attacking force miraculously breached the first outer wall, they would not find the heart of the castle. Instead, they would find themselves trapped in a deadly kill zone between two walls, exposed to archers and artillery firing down from the higher, inner fortifications. This design sent a clear, terrifying message to any would-be conqueror. Even your greatest victory here would become a devastating trap. The placement and shape of those 42 towers are another encoded lesson in medieval military engineering. They are not simply square or round. Many are polygonal or angular, a design that served two critical purposes. Firstly, the angled surfaces were far more resistant to the impact of siege projectiles like catapult stones, as they could deflect a blow rather than absorb it directly like a flat wall. Secondly, and more brilliantly, their projection from the main wall eliminated any blind spots for the defenders. Archers stationed within these towers could provide enfilading fire, shooting laterally along the face of the walls, ensuring that no attacker could safely scale the fortifications without being exposed to a hail of arrows from the side. This meant every inch of the castle's perimeter was covered by overlapping fields of fire, a defensive harmony that required meticulous planning and spoke of a deep, encoded knowledge of ballistics and combat tactics. Beyond the grand walls, the castle whispers smaller, subtler secrets meant for those who dwelled within. The entire structure follows the brutal, unforgiving contours of the mountain ridge, its walls snaking along the precipice in a way that makes it appear as a natural extension of the rock itself. This organic design wasn't just about saving on masonry. It made the fortress incredibly difficult to target with siege engines, as there were no long, straight walls to aim at. Within the citadel, a complex network of stairways, narrow passageways, and tight corners funnels any intruder into predictable, easily defensible channels, while providing the garrison with hidden routes to quickly reinforce threatened sectors. The careful positioning of water reservoirs and storage magazines near the highest points of the citadel ensured that even during a prolonged siege, the command center would hold out long after the outer walls might have fallen. Rudkhan Castle, therefore, is far more than a pile of old stones on a hill. It is a stone-cold sermon on survival, a permanent treatise on defense written in the language of rock, elevation, and strategic genius, meant to be read by friends and foes alike for centuries. Journeying from the formidable mountain fortress of Rudkhan, we now travel south to a river valley where an empire sought not to defy nature, but to impose a new, perfect order upon it. This is the Sassanian city of Bishapur, or the city of beautiful Shapur, founded by the second Sassanian king, Shapur I, in the 3rd century. Unlike organically grown towns, Bishapur was a planned city, a grand urban experiment conceived as a victory monument and a living manifesto of Sassanian ideology. To walk its partially excavated streets is not to wander through a random collection of buildings, but to read a deliberate, encoded text about power, hierarchy, and the very definition of civilization, written in stone and urban geometry. The most immediate and powerful hidden message is the city's revolutionary Hippodamian grid plan, a design philosophy borrowed from the very Greeks and Romans that Shapur had so famously defeated. The use of a strict, right-angled grid was a profound statement in itself. In the Persian world, where circular plans and more organic layouts were common, this rigid, chessboard-like organization was an import. By adopting it, Shapur was sending a multi-layered message. Firstly, it showcased his cosmopolitanism and power. He could not only defeat the Roman emperors, as he did by capturing Valerian, but he could also appropriate their most sophisticated urban planning concepts and deploy them better than they could. Secondly, the grid represented absolute imperial control. Just as the king brought order to the chaos of the battlefield, his city planners brought geometric order to the chaos of the landscape. Every street, every block, every building plot was predetermined, leaving no room for the messy, unplanned growth of a traditional city. The grid was a physical metaphor for the unshakable, rational, and all-encompassing authority of the Sassanian state, organizing society into a clear, logical, and easily managed pattern. But this was not a blind copy of a Greek model. The Sassanians injected their own profound ideological layers into the plan, creating a unique hybrid. The most significant modification was the incorporation of a grand ceremonial axis that cuts diagonally through the rigid grid. This majestic avenue, stretching from the city gates to the heart of the royal district, disrupts the mathematical regularity with a powerful, dynamic thrust. This was the path of power. Along this route, victory processions would have marched, displaying spoils of war and captive Roman soldiers, including perhaps Emperor Valerian himself, to the city's populace. The diagonal axis transforms the neutral grid into a directed, hierarchical space. It creates a processional corridor that visually and physically connects the outside world to the inner sanctum of royal authority, guiding all movement toward the seat of the king. This clever fusion of the Greek grid and the Persian ceremonial way is a hidden message of cultural synthesis, proclaiming that the Sassanian Empire was the true heir to all worldly knowledge, capable of blending the best of East and West into a new, superior whole. This theme of synthesis and calculated display continues in the city's decorative program, particularly in the stunning floor mosaics found in a building believed to be a royal palace. These are not the grand imperial reliefs of Persepolis or tacky Boston. They are more intimate yet equally telling, Surprisingly, many of these mosaics are executed in a distinctly Roman style and are even signed by Greek artists, likely brought back as prisoners from Shapur's campaigns. They depict scenes of celebration with figures playing music, pouring wine, and reveling. At first glance, they seem to portray a life of Hellenistic leisure. But the hidden message is far more cunning. These scenes of celebration are not necessarily a record of Sassanian court life. They are more likely a symbolic depiction of the consequences of Shapur's victory. The peace and prosperity that allow for such cultural refinement and leisurely enjoyment are shown as the direct result of the king's military prowess. By employing conquered Roman artisans to create art that celebrates the peace he imposed, Shapur delivered the ultimate insult to his defeated foes. Their own cultural expertise was being used to glorify their conqueror. The mosaics are a sophisticated form of propaganda, illustrating that under Sassanian rule, even the conquered peoples could enjoy the fruits of a stable and prosperous empire, all thanks to the strength and benevolence of the king. Finally, the very layout of the city's districts encoded a clear social hierarchy. The highest ground within the city walls was reserved for the elite, the royal palace, the fire temple, and the residences of the nobility. From this elevated position, they literally and symbolically looked down upon the commercial and residential quarters of the merchants, artisans, and common citizens on the lower terrain. The fire temple, dedicated to the Zoroastrian faith, was placed in a prominent position, visually reinforcing the divine sanction of the social order. The city's plan taught a silent lesson in class structure every single day, simply through the inclined path one walked to reach one's home. Shapur was not designed for social mobility. It was designed to visually cement the status quo, with the king and the priestly class at the apex, supported by a structured and predictable society below. It was a machine for reinforcing imperial ideology, a place where every turned corner and every walked street was a subtle reminder of one's place in the Sassanian cosmos, a perfect, ordered world brought into being by the will of a divinely appointed king. Tucked away in the heart of the mountains near Yazd, a destination emerges that feels less like a structure built by human hands and more like a place revealed by the earth itself. This is the Per-Isab shrine, also known as Chak Chak, the most sacred Zoroastrian pilgrimage site in Iran. To reach it, devotees must undertake a journey as symbolic as the destination, leaving the flat, arid plains behind to ascend into the stark, rocky folds of the mountain range. The final approach is a climb on foot, a physical exertion that serves as a preparatory ritual, stripping away the distractions of the mundane world. And then you see it, a sanctuary seemingly growing from the cliff face, a miraculous green oasis of trees and foliage blossoming from the barren, rust-colored rock. This stunning contrast is the first and most powerful hidden message of Per-Isab's, a declaration that life and divine grace can erupt in the most unexpected and inhospitable of places. The shrine's central miracle and the source of its name is water. Chak Chak is an onomatopoeia for the constant, soothing sound of water droplets falling chak 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 from deep within the mountain cave into a sacred stone basin below. According to Zoroastrian tradition, this spring is no geological accident. It is a sacred tear of the mountain itself, sprung forth to protect Nikbanu, the daughter of the last Sassanian king, Yazd III, as she fled from invading Arab armies. The legend says the mountain opened up to shelter her, and the spring began to weep for her plight. This story encodes a profound theological truth within a beautiful narrative. The water represents the compassion of Ahura Mazda, providing not just physical sustenance but spiritual solace in a time of utter desperation. The continuous, rhythmic drip is a perpetual reminder that the divine is not a distant, abstract force, but an ever-present, nurturing reality that responds to the suffering of the faithful, offering renewal and hope even in the darkest hour. This reverence for water is the cornerstone of the shrine's hidden language. In Zoroastrianism, water is one of the 7 sacred creations of Ahura Mazda to be kept pure and venerated. At Persepolis, the water emerges not from a man-made pipe but directly from the living rock, making it the purest form of Apadana or holy water. Pilgrims do not simply look at it, they interact with it ritually. They catch the droplets in their hands to drink or anoint their faces, participating directly in the miracle. This act is a powerful somatic message about internal and external purification. The physical water cleanses the body, while its sacred origin and the intention behind receiving it cleanse the spirit. The architecture amplifies this message. The shrine is built to highlight and protect the spring, not to overshadow it. The natural cave forms the main sanctuary, with man-made structures, a few rooms, a courtyard, a ceremonial fire temple, added almost apologetically around it. This design hierarchy makes a clear statement. Human construction is secondary. The primary sacred element is the natural phenomenon provided by the divine. The mountain location itself is another layer of encoded meaning. High places have always been associated with proximity to the divine across cultures, and in Zoroastrian tradition, mountains are seen as earthly manifestations of the sacred realm of light, the Menag. By placing its holiest site on a mountain face, the faith physically enacts the soul's aspiration to ascend from the material world toward spiritual enlightenment. The climb to the shrine is a reenactment of this spiritual struggle and ascent. Furthermore, the mountain's stark, imposing presence speaks of endurance and permanence. It has witnessed empires rise and fall, yet the spring continues to drip and the faith continues to endure. The mountain is a silent testament to the idea that true faith, like the mountain itself, is resilient and everlasting, providing a stable, unchanging refuge for the spirit despite the tumultuous changes of history below. The ritual practices observed at Persepolis during the annual pilgrimage further deepen these hidden messages. For 10 days each June, thousands of Zoroastrians from around the world gather here, transforming the quiet mountainside into a vibrant, temporary community. This gathering is not just a prayer service, it is a living performance of identity and continuity. The communal cooking, sharing of meals, and recitation of prayers reinforce social bonds that have been stretched across the globe by diaspora. The act of a global community returning to this remote spot is a powerful message of unity and cultural resilience. It proclaims that their connection to their history, their land, and their faith is stronger than any force of dispersion or assimilation. The rituals performed, lighting of fires, chanting of ancient prayers in Avestan before the sacred spring, are not merely traditions. They are active transmissions of coded knowledge from one generation to the next, ensuring that the hidden messages of the mountain, the water, and the fire continue to be understood not as folklore, but as lived experiential truth. The shrine, therefore, is far more than a monument. It is a living, breathing, dripping heart of a faith, pumping the lifeblood of tradition and spiritual meaning through the veins of its people, year after year for century upon century. High on the windswept hills overlooking the city of Marrakech, the ruins of a medieval complex whisper a radically different narrative about the Mongol Empire, one not of relentless destruction, but of breathtaking intellectual curiosity. This is the Ilkhanid Observatory, founded in the 13th century under Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan. While his armies were reshaping the political map of the world, Hulagu's most visionary project was this sanctuary for science, a place where the hidden messages are not of divine right or imperial power, but of cosmic order, encoded in the precise angles of fallen walls and the meticulous records of planetary motion left behind. The first staggering hidden message is the observatory's very existence, a powerful refutation of the stereotype of the Mongols as mere conquerors. After the brutal sack of Baghdad, Hulagu and his brilliant vizier, Nasir al-Din al-Tusi, made a conscious decision to preserve and assimilate the knowledge of the civilizations they had overrun. Building this state-of-the-art scientific institution was the ultimate act of this policy. It proclaimed that the new Ilkhanid dynasty was sophisticated, forward-looking, and eager to harness the intellectual capital of its diverse empire to unlock the secrets of the universe. The location itself, far from the traditional centers of Islamic learning, was a bold statement. The pursuit of knowledge would be the cornerstone of this new Mongol-led world order, and it would be pursued with the same ambitious scale as their military campaigns. To decode the observatory's secrets, we must step into the role of an archaeologist astronomer. The most famous surviving instrument is a massive, horseshoe-shaped trench of stone, a remnant of what was likely a monumental mural quadrant. This wasn't just a big protractor, it was a precision engine for measuring the altitude of stars with unprecedented accuracy. Its immense size, the arc spanning a radius of over 40 meters, was the key to its hidden message. A larger instrument meant a finer scale, allowing astronomers to make minute readings that could reveal the tiny discrepancies in planetary positions that had plagued models for centuries. The sheer physicality of this structure communicates a fundamental truth of medieval science. To understand the vastness of the cosmos, you first had to commit to a colossal feat of engineering on Earth. But the true revolution of Marrakech was not in its stone, but in its intellectual synthesis, a hidden message of cross-cultural collaboration etched into its very foundation. Nasir al-Din al-Tusi assembled a team of the greatest minds from across the empire, including Chinese astronomers, Persian mathematicians, and even a Christian scholar from Syria. This was a United Nations of medieval science. Each tradition brought its own strengths. The Chinese with their precise long-term celestial records, the Persians with their sophisticated geometric models, and the Greeks with the theoretical legacy of Ptolemy. The hidden message here is that no single culture had a monopoly on truth. The answers to the universe's puzzles would be found by weaving together these disparate strands of knowledge. This collaborative spirit produced the Ziggurat, a grand astronomical handbook that synthesized this global knowledge into a new, more accurate model of the solar system. Perhaps the most profound hidden message to emerge from this collaboration is the Tusi couple, a mathematical device conceived by al-Tusi to solve a problem that had troubled astronomers since antiquity: how to account for the apparent looping motion of the planets without violating the ancient Greek principle of uniform circular motion. The Tusi couple is a breathtakingly elegant geometric solution, two circles, one rotating inside the other, that generate perfect linear motion from circular motion. This was more than a mathematical trick. It was a conceptual breakthrough that allowed astronomers to preserve the philosophical beauty of circular orbits while accurately describing the observed non-circular paths of the planets. This brilliant device, born at Marrakech, would later travel to Europe, where it may have influenced the work of Copernicus himself. The hidden message of the Tusi couple is that the deepest truths of the universe often require us to see beyond apparent contradictions, to find harmony where others only see disorder. The Marrakech Observatory stands as a timeless monument to that quest, a place where the light of reason shone brightly, bridging cultures and centuries to map the heavens. Standing in the heart of Tehran, amidst the relentless energy of a modern metropolis, the Goldston Palace complex feels like a page from a different story entirely. Its very presence, a collection of ornate pavilions and lush gardens walled off from the urban sprawl, is the first and most potent hidden message. This was the seat of the Qajar dynasty in the 19th century, a period when Persia found itself caught between its own majestic past and the overwhelming political and cultural pressures of a modernizing Europe. The palace is not a monument to a single, unchanging idea of power, but a breathtakingly complex and sometimes conflicted architectural dialogue. Every tile, every mirror, every imported marble column is a carefully chosen word in a desperate and brilliant argument about what it meant to be a powerful and relevant nation in a rapidly changing world. The most striking conversation is the one happening between east and west, right on the facade of buildings like the iconic Takht-i Imama, the marble throne veranda. Here, the fundamental grammar of Persian architecture remains intact: the lofty iwan, the deep vault, the delicate Mokhana's stalactite vaulting that has defined royal spaces for centuries. But look closer at the supporting columns. They are not the traditional, massive, fluted pillars of Persepolis. They are slender, European-style caryatids, sculpted figures of women that seem to hold the weight of the veranda on their heads. This is not a clumsy pastiche, it is a deliberate fusion. The message is one of selective adaptation. The Qajars were saying they could incorporate European artistic forms, but only to support a fundamentally Persian structure of power. The throne itself, carved from brilliant yellow marble, remains the absolute, unchanging centerpiece, a symbol of a monarchy that would adopt new aesthetics but never relinquish its ancient central authority. This theme of controlled appropriation continues inside the most dazzling space in the complex, the Hall of Mirrors, or Tala-e-Ayane. From a distance, it appears to be a wave of pure light, a symphony of countless tiny mirror fragments and stained glass that could rival any European palace. The technique of Aynakari, or mirrorwork, is a Persian art form, but the sheer, overwhelming scale and the crystalline effect here were directly inspired by the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. For the Qajar Shahs, particularly Nasir al-Din Shah, who built it after his travels to Europe, this room was a powerful declaration. It announced that Tehran could now produce a level of opulence and technical brilliance that could stand toe-to-toe with the great courts of the West. It was a statement of parity, of cultural confidence. Yet, the hidden message for his own people was different. For a courtier standing in that hall, the effect was disorienting and awe-inspiring. The thousand-fractured reflections of the Shah multiplied his presence, creating an almost divine aura of infinite regality. The European-inspired technology was being used to amplify a very traditional Persian concept of the monarch's larger-than-life, semi-divine status. Beyond the glittering surfaces, the palace grounds reveal a more profound and subtle political strategy encoded in their very layout. Unlike the rigid, formal gardens of Versailles, which were designed to demonstrate man's absolute domination over nature, the Golstan's gardens retain the classic Persian Chahar bog plan, a divided garden with water channels representing the four rivers of paradise. This was a deeply symbolic choice. Amidst the frantic modernization of the city outside, the royal family maintained this walled garden as a preserved ideal of the Persian universe, a microcosm of order, harmony, and tradition. It was a silent promise that no matter how many European fashions were adopted or how many telegraph lines were strung, the spiritual and cultural heart of Iran remained intact, protected, and in bloom within these walls. The palace was a carefully managed filter, not an open door. It allowed in European technology, military advisors, and architectural styles, but it sought to barricade the core of Persian identity from the tidal wave of Western influence, presenting a vision of a nation that could modernize on its own terms without losing its soul. Our final journey takes us to one of the most extraordinary places on Earth, not for a single monument, but for the entire story of civilization itself, written layer upon layer in the same patch of Earth. This is the ancient site of Susa, a city that was continuously inhabited for over 6,000 years, from the dawn of history until the medieval Islamic era. To walk through its excavated ruins is not to see a single frozen moment in time, but to read a sprawling, epic novel of human adaptation, where each chapter was built directly on top of the last. Unlike a tomb or a palace with a single message, Susa's hidden code is one of relentless cultural dialogue, a testament to the fact that no civilization truly ends, it simply becomes the foundation for the next. The deepest, most profound message of Susa is its sheer longevity, a hidden lesson in urban resilience. Most ancient cities were abandoned, destroyed by natural disaster, or simply faded away. Susa, however, possesses a kind of geological patience. It was the capital of the elusive Elamites, a powerful kingdom that rivaled Mesopotamia. Then it became a prized administrative center for the Achaemenid Persians. Alexander the Great celebrated his victories here, and later the Parthian and Sassanian empires fortified it. Even after the Islamic conquest, it remained a vital hub. This uninterrupted habitation means the ground beneath Susa is a vertical archive. Archaeologists digging down don't just find artifacts, they find entire epochs. A Persian column base might sit atop an Elamite temple foundation, which itself was built over a Neolithic settlement. The hidden message in this stratification is that human progress is not a series of clean breaks, but a continuous process of borrowing, repurposing, and building upon the past. The city itself is a physical argument against cultural amnesia, demonstrating that the most enduring settlements are those that can absorb change rather than resist it. This theme of absorption and synthesis is vividly encoded in one of Susa's most famous artifacts, now housed in the Louvre, the Code of Hammurabi. This towering black diorite stele, inscribed with 282 laws, was not actually found in Babylon. It was discovered right here in Susa, a prize of war hauled back as booty by an Elamite king in the 12th century BC. This object's presence is a multi-layered hidden message. On one level, it is a simple boast of military conquest, a trophy proclaiming Elamite power over its Babylonian rivals. But on a much deeper level, its careful preservation tells a different story. The conquering Elamites did not destroy the code, they brought it home and undoubtedly studied it. This suggests a respect for the sophisticated legal and administrative systems of the people they had defeated. The stele becomes a symbol of intellectual plunder, showing that the Elamites understood that true power lay not just in capturing wealth, but in capturing knowledge. They were reverse engineering the secrets of their rivals' success, learning how to govern a complex state by adopting and adapting the best ideas of their time. This pattern of cultural fusion reaches its zenith during the Achaemenid Persian period, when Cyrus the Great and later Darius I made Susa one of their 4 imperial capitals. They didn't raise the existing Elamite city. They built upon it, and in doing so, they left a stunning hidden message about the very nature of the Persian Empire. The construction of the Grand Apadana Palace and the royal complex was detailed in the famous Susa Foundation charters. These inscriptions, commissioned by Darius, boast that the materials and craftsmen were gathered from every corner of the empire. The cedar was brought from Lebanon, the gold from Sardis and Bactria, the lapis lazuli from Sogdiana, the silver and ebony from Egypt, and the artisans who worked the stone were Ionians and Sardians. This was far more than a logistics report. It was a political manifesto in clay. The palace itself was a microcosm of the empire, a physical embodiment of the Pax Persica. Its very bricks and beams proclaimed that the strength of the realm lay in its dizzying diversity, and that the king's power was demonstrated by his ability to harness the unique skills and resources of all his subject peoples to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Even as empires rose and fell, the site's spiritual significance demonstrated a remarkable continuity, often simply shifting form. The same acropolis that held the Elamite Ziggurat, dedicated to their protector god Inshushinak, later became the site of a Sassanian fire temple and eventually a medieval Islamic settlement. This wasn't a case of one religion erasing another. It was a gradual, organic process of spiritual reinterpretation. A place deemed holy by one culture often retained that aura for the next, even if the names of the gods and the forms of worship changed. The high ground of the Acropolis always represented a bridge to the divine. The hidden message here is one of deep, subconscious cultural memory. The human attraction to sacred geography is so powerful that it can outlast languages, religions, and entire political systems. The stones of Susa whisper that while our expressions of faith may evolve, our desire to connect with the divine on a specific, hallowed piece of ground is a constant thread running through the entire tapestry of human history. Ultimately, the greatest hidden message of Susa is one of identity. In a world often obsessed with cultural purity and definitive origins, Susa stands as a monumental rebuttal. It is the antithesis of a city built by one people for one ideology. It is a palimpsest, a manuscript that has been written on, erased, and written on again countless times, with the faint traces of every previous author still visible beneath the latest text. Its story is not one of Elamite or Persian or Islamic supremacy, but of a unique Susian identity that was always a hybrid, a blend of all who had ever called it home. The city teaches us that civilization is not a solitary tree with deep, isolated roots, but a vast, interconnected forest where the roots of different species intertwine and support one another, drawing strength from the same rich soil of shared history. It is a fitting final monument for our journey, a place that doesn't hold just one hidden message but thousands, all speaking at once in a glorious, harmonious chorus that sings the long, complex, and endlessly adaptive story of us all. From the grand political proclamations carved into mountainsides to the whispering droplets of water in a sacred mountain spring, our journey through 30 Persian monuments reveals a civilization that spoke in layers, a culture for which architecture was never just about function or even mere beauty. It was a language of power, faith, science, and poetry, encoded in stone, brick, and tile, waiting for those willing to listen closely. We've seen how a staircase could be a political manifesto, a tomb a celestial calendar, a bridge a musical instrument, and a garden a map of the universe. Each hidden message, whether intended for the gods, for rivals, for future generations, or for the soul itself, offers a unique keyhole through which we can peer into the profound depths of Persian thought. These monuments teach us that history is not a flat text to be read, but a rich, multidimensional tapestry to be experienced. They show us a world view where nothing was ever just one thing, where a ruler was both a king and a divine intermediary, where water was both a physical resource and a sacred entity, and where a building could simultaneously provide shelter, tell time, and guide the spirit toward enlightenment. The incredible diversity of these encoded communications, from the hard power of Darius at Bisotan to the soft, luminous poetry of the Nasir al-Mulk Mosque, paints a picture of a civilization of unparalleled sophistication, one that valued intellectual curiosity, artistic expression, and spiritual inquiry as the highest pillars of a great society. This exploration invites us to change how we see not just Persia, but the entire ancient world. It challenges us to become active detectives of history, to look beyond the obvious grandeur and ask the deeper questions. Why this shape? Why this orientation? Why this material? The next time you stand before any historical site, anywhere in the world, remember the lessons of Persia. Look for the whispers in the stone, marvel at the engineering that speaks of environmental harmony, decipher the symbols that reveal cosmic beliefs, and appreciate the artistry that was meant to transform the human experience. History's greatest secrets are rarely hidden in locked vaults. They are often in plain sight, waiting for a curious mind to connect the dots. We've wandered through deserts and climbed mountains, decoded inscriptions and unraveled mystic symbols together. But this conversation is just beginning. Now we turn it over to you. Which of these hidden messages resonated with you the most? Was it the democratic efficiency of the wind catchers of Yazd, the terrifying ingenuity of Rudkhan Castle's defenses, or the heartbreaking resilience etched into the towers of silence? Perhaps it was the cosmic ambition of the Maraghe Observatory or the joyful, color-drenched philosophy of the Pink Mosque. Share your thoughts and your favorite moments in the comments below. Let's keep the discovery going. Thank you for joining on this incredible journey into the hidden heart of Persia. Until next time, keep looking